Hey everyone, Doug here from 2 Plus Stuff, and I wanted to do something a little bit fun today. And GW was kind enough to send me an early copy of the Fyreslayer's Battletome. I got this Monday morning. I think Saturday was the day when pre-orders went up that content creators were allowed to talk about it. For some reason, I'm sure it's because I live in the Pacific Northwest and mail's terrible here. I got mine that Monday. That's perfectly fine. So what I'm going to do is review this book, and I'm going to talk specifically about the war scrolls and the tactics, that kind of gameplay side of things in this video. This is my first time doing this, so if you like it, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to skip the lore. I want to highlight a few things with the artwork and stuff like that are pretty great. But of course, next week will be a lore series. Hopefully next week will be a lore series talking about Fyreslayers, the updates of which there are many, and I'm very, very excited about that. So if you are available and you're in the chat, please go ahead and let me know if you can hear and see me okay. If you're watching this later on YouTube, for some reason, sometimes when YouTube compiles a video when it's done, it desyncs the audio, which is very frustrating, but you can always go ahead and in the description, watch it on Twitch, and there's never any audio issues over there, so I'm sorry about that. It's just a YouTube thing. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and crack into this. Downward cam. And basically what I'm going to do is I want to hide a few things at the beginning of the book. Let me turn my light so it's not quite as, here we go. Not quite as, the pages are like semi-reflective. As far as the lore goes, I said I wanted to touch on something. And if you are a Seraphon player or a Beastclaw Raiders, what are some Sylvaneth, all those books, the older first edition books, who haven't been updated like Stormcast and Khorne and all that stuff like that, I will tell you to be excited, because the way that they have rewritten the lore, they've gone into so much depth about different things. It is truly interesting. Look at this artwork. This is just so cool. I just love it. So I got some cool people popping up in the chat. Thank you. I'm glad y'all can hear me. So I just wanted to highlight that spoiler alert for the coming week. I love what they did with the lore. They maintained the same feel, but they just kind of added depth. One of the things that I am critical of the older books for was the way they literally wrote. And by that I mean, you know, when you were in school and you had to have a 500-word essay, and so instead of saying it was 2:30 in the afternoon, you would say the time was 2:30 on the on the third day of the month. You would go and you would stretch sentences to fill your word count. That's how it felt in some of the older books. But basically, because they added new material, the writing is much more succinct and clearer, and I just enjoyed it a lot more. It's a lot more fun to read, to be perfectly honest with you. So I just love the artwork. Honestly, none of it changed as far as the unit's roles. It's still a patriarchal system. They do talk about families. Women are rare, which is interesting because they just straight up ignored the fact that women exist. So, yeah. And John says GW still needs to learn to use 5-word sentences. Yup. 10 out of 10 would agree. Okay, sorry, get my water ball out of the way. And it's still, what they really went into, where is it at? With keeping in touch with all of the newer ones, they give you a ton of examples of different lodges, and some of them are represented rules-wise, we'll get to. But they just give you so many ideas of how to make these guys, who can potentially look very samey, look very different, and I absolutely like that. The painting section is some of the best. The only thing they don't really go into too much detail, and I wish they had, was different skin tones. They show you the basic, white guy, but even within these pictures, they have different. This is a darker tone in this one. They don't go into much detail about that. I wish they did. I wish there was at least 2 different skin tones, but the rest of it's pretty straightforward. Very clear tutorials and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I wanted to point those things out because those are enhancements to this style of book. Also, if you can do this tattoo thing where it's blazing runes up his arm, you just win. Major victory every game. And yeah, so that's it. I just wanted to get that out of the way. We're going to dive into that next week from a lore perspective. I love the things that they added for art and for painting tutorials. It's top notch. We expect those nowadays from Battletomes, but they weren't around when this book was first released. So, let's see here. Captain Andrew says players need to get better about basing their Fyreslayers differently to help differentiate units. I tend to agree the bases definitely do help, just because everyone is skin, beard, and what are you holding? And it's kind of a sorry, I knocked my speaker over. That's kind of a criticism I had before when the book came out, is the models can be very samey. So we're going to jump into allegiance abilities. I'm going to pull my light back towards me just a smidge. There we go. It's not glaring. I'll try to hold the book at an angle so it's not too bad. And if you are familiar with the Fyreslayer's allegiance abilities from the General Handbook, Blitzkrieg, we just started, you will recognize this. They didn't do a lot of changes. They did tweaks and then change some wording. But basically what it is, every turn you get to pick to ignite a rune. And you can only choose it once per game. And they're all very different. What you do is you'll choose your rune and then roll a die. On a 6, you get like an enhanced effect. So it always goes off. There's no chance involved. But on a 6, you get that plus a special thing. It's very, very straightforward. I've seen people oftentimes just forget to roll that die. It's very important that you do, because when these enhanced effects go off, it's bonkers. So let's dive into those. First one being Rune of Fury. Oh, I'm sorry, I should add, you also have to pick a different one each game round. So Rune of Fury. Reroll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by Fyreslayer units. It's board wide. All these things are board wide. And if you... Where's it at? Enhanced effect right below it. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the melee weapon. So if you roll at 6, boom. And you get +1 attack and reroll hit rolls of 1. Rune of Searing Heat. If the unmodified wound roll for an attack made by a Fyreslayer's unit is 6, add 1 to the damage characteristic of the weapon. So that's pretty sweet. Enhanced effect is roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of the Fyreslayer unit. When the rune is activated on a 2-up, the enemy suffers 1 mortal wound. So this is cool. I mean, it helps. You're doing more damage per attack, well, per unit, because someone's going to roll a 6 likely with the amount of dice you'll be throwing, and we'll get to that later. And the enhanced effect is when you choose the rune on a 2-up, everyone around your army takes a mortal wound, which is sweet. Let's see here. Rune of Awakened Steel. Improve the rend characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Fyreslayers by 1. Super good. That was my favorite one when I was using, my Fyreslayers, because I used to play this army. Definitely, because army-wide rend on the amount of attacks you can get with these guys is pretty dope. And the enhanced effect is it improves by a further 1. So there's a chance that you'll have rend 2 on everyone, which is just, it's disgusting. I love it. Rune of Fiery Determination. Add 1 of the bravery characteristic of Fyreslayer units. I believe that used to be you don't take battle shock. So, but there's a lot of horde units in this army, or at least your main battle line unit is a horde unit. So you get bravery modifiers for that. I don't know. I don't see myself using that one a lot because I don't think of bravery, which is to my detriment. But yeah, when I get into this section, I'll answer some questions in the chat. And then enhanced effect is you don't take battle shock. So I think they just kind of tweaked that a bit. And then then it's Relentless Zeal. Add 2 inches to the move characteristic of friendly Fyreslayers. I think that used to be 4 inches, if I'm not mistaken. I should have my GHPs packed away. Sorry, guys. And the enhanced effect is add 2 to charge rolls. But if you were to combine this with, say, an allied wizard and cogs, you're killing it. So... and the last one is Rune of Farsight, which is add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with Fire Steel throwing axes by friendly Fyreslayer units. And the enhanced effect is add 1 to the wound roll. So it just makes them better. And let's see. So they have lodges now, which is their Storm Host equivalent. If your Fyreslayer army, you can give it a lodge keyword. All Fyreslayers in your army gain that keyword. If it already has a lodge, can I gain another one? Let's see here. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So in the Flesh Eater Courts book, you either take their General's Handbook table, like they have their like delusions, or you can take whatever they're called, their lodge equivalent. But this lodge is in addition to this, not instead of, from what I can read. On page indicated, Yep, so I think that's pretty cool that this is in addition to, not instead of. So I'm just going to look at the chat real quick. If you have any questions about the allegiance abilities, I'm going to be referring back to them because we have to keep those in mind whenever we're looking at units. Try not to look at them in a vacuum. Let's see here. Tab says, my buddies are just getting an AOS. One's Beast Claw, the other one's doing Sylvaneth, hoping they get booked soon. Man, I really want Beast Claw Raiders based on the lore updates and the clarifications in this book, just from the fun stuff. Absolutely. So let's see here. Players need to get better about basing their... Oh yeah, we already did that one. Yep, I think it's important. Distinction is going to be very, very important with this army, especially if it becomes more popular. So let's see here. Nita Newman, I'm sorry, I don't remember how to pronounce that. Like one of the Fyreslayers had their hands on the feet painted black. Oh, you're talking about the artwork? Yeah. It's not for everyone. Adrian, can you remind peeps to go take the survey? Sure, go take the survey. Block 45 minutes out of your life and go take the survey. It was long. I clocked out. I was like, nah, I'm done. I gotta get back to work. I was tired of my lunch break. Let's see here. Catmanju, I love their allegiance versatility. Seriously, I've always started this army a few times. Always talked myself out of it. Yeah, you know, what's cool about this is it's a very reactionary allegiance ability, whereas other ones are very like aggressive, by meaning like the Skaven one giving you bonuses to hordes, right, with their bravery bonus, and then also the pluses to hit and wound. It just kind of sets you down that aggressive course of like, take lots of models, hit all the things, don't run away as much. This one is very like, what do you need this round? And I love when allegiance abilities are reactionary. I just think Khorne is in the same boat, where you can spend the blood tithe points as needed game to game. As long as you learn this table well, you can react to a lot of different things. And I think that's cool. I think it rewards smart people who really, really get invested in this faction and learn it and the tools of the trade and that kind of stuff very, very well. So I agree. I'm going to move on here. And we're going to jump. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to skip the command traits and the artifacts of power for now. We're going to talk about the heroes first. Because a lot of... Sorry, I'm shutting my glasses. Because a lot of these have to do with attacking and spells and prayer. Not spells, but prayers. And so we need some context before we can appreciate these. So let's hop, skip, and jump past them. One thing I will talk about, because it doesn't actually affect someone's like, their stats or like that. We're going to talk about the prayers. Okay, this is the spell lore equivalent, but basically, in addition to any other prayers that one of these priests, because now they have priests, they didn't before, knows, you get to pick one for each of them. So if you have two priests, you get to pick two prayers. They can be the same one. They can be different. It's whatever you want. Regardless, each prayer or each blessing can only be chanted once per turn, regardless of how many priests know that prayer. So the first one is Molten Infusion. At the start of your hero phase, one friendly model that knows this prayer can chant it. Basically, I'm going to skip ahead because it's the same wording on all of these as far as like, I'm just going to skip to what it's cast on and what it does. So on a 3-up, the prayer is answered. If it's answered, pick a Magmic Invocation model within 12 inches of this priest. At the end of the battle round, do not make a temperamental nature for that. Okay, so basically, pause there. This actually works out pretty well. Magmic Invocations are their version of not endless spells. Kevin Potter, you said you have your eye on Fyreslayers. We're talking about it right now as far as if they're worth it. Let's see. So if you haven't, we did a live show and they kind of spoiled the Magmic Invocations, but we'll talk about them again here. But basically, if you're not familiar, every turn that those not endless spells are on the table, they have a chance of going away. So basically, at the end of each battle round, you must take a temperamental nature roll for each Magmic Invocation on the battlefield. Roll a die, add 1 if there are any Fyreslayers, priests within 6 inches. On a 1 through 3, the invocation is removed from the battlefield. So you'll summon any one of their endless spells, not endless spells. And then at the end of the battle round, battle round, roll a die to see if it goes away. On a 3-up, on a 1 through 3, it goes away. You add one if there's a priest nearby, but this allows you to just kind of keep it in play. Is it worth it? I don't know. I guess if you really like them, we'll dive into these more. But it's cool. You know, what I will say to this idea is I like the fact that their prayer lore interacts more with their not endless spell thing than I think any other faction does. That's kind of cool, because now you have this thing you can summon and then a thing that you can do to keep the thing you summoned at top condition. I like that. I don't know. It's interesting, if nothing else. Next one is Searing Heat. This one goes off on a 3 as well. If the prayer is answered, pick an enemy unit within 18 inches of the priest. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that unit to the start of your next hero phase. Always good. To hit modifiers are brutal. They shut your opponent down both emotionally and effectively on the tabletop. They just can't hit anything. Prayer of Ash. At the start of your hero phase, 1 friendly one. Okay, so it goes off on a 4 this time. For Prayer of Ash, pick a friendly unit wholly within 18 inches of the priest. That's a pretty big bubble. Add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target that unit until the next hero phase. So this is important because I'm just going to spoil right now, most of the army lost their save after the save thing. They're not nearly as tanky as they were, or at least tanky in the same way as they were before. Drastic changes in this book to the way the army functions. So giving them add 1 to their save rolls is pretty stinking sweet. I dig it. Ember Storm goes off on a 3. And if this one is answered, pick a friendly unit of Volkite Berserkers or Hearth Guard Berserkers. Those are your melee versions. That's your basic melee and your elite melee. Wholly within 18 inches of the priest. That unit can run and still charge later in the turn. The fact that this army is so slow, and remember, this combines with our allegiance ability. Where that is. Rune of Relentless Zeal, add 2 to the move characteristic, and the enhanced effect is +2 to charge. So all that stacks. So just kind of be mindful. Once per the game, they can be incredibly fast, especially if you are able to get off a run and charge. It just makes everything so much faster than you might think. That's cool. Really cool. Prayer of Grim. So that one goes off on a 3. That's awesome. Prayer of Grimnir's Fury. This one goes off on a 3 as well. If it's answered, pick a friendly hero that is not mounted on a Magma Draweth. Okay, your foot hero. And is within 3 inches of an enemy unit and within 12 of the priest. Okay, make a pile in, move with that hero, and then attack with all its melee weapons it is armed with. So you take a hero who's on foot and near the priest. He piles in and attacks. Okay, well, we'll take a look at the heroes and the artifacts and that kind of stuff. That might be good. Generally speaking, I don't want my heroes getting in combat, especially ones that are like 5 wounds, whatever they are. So, yeah. And then the last one is Gilded Claws. 30 hero phase. So this one goes off on a 3 as well. So I think the Prayer of Ash is a 4, but the rest of them seem to be 3s. That's interesting. This one goes off on a 3. Pick a friendly Magma Draweth. That's the key word, so it's anybody riding a Magma Draweth. Wholly within 12 of the priest. You can reroll wound rolls for the attacks made with that unit's claws and horns. So it's buffing up the Magma Draweth. I dig it. Okay. Interesting. So as far as the prayers go, ones that really catch my eye, Ember Storm, Run and Charge, is super good. Goes off on a 3. And then also the Searing Heat for shutting down your opponent. That's the -1 to hit from him. And what's cool is that's not a wholly within, it's just a within. So if you tag one guy in a unit of 40, you can get a minus modifier to that entire unit. And then the Prayer of Ash, it's a +1 to your saves, but that one goes off on a 4. And yeah. Spoiler alert, because I'm keeping it relevant to what we're talking about on this page, trying not to take things in a vacuum. If you're near the terrain piece, you get +1 to your prayer rolls. So that's huge. So most of these are off on 2s. They can theoretically go off on a 2, and then Prayer of Ash going off on a 3. Let's see. We have, yes, our Magmic Invocations. And then we come to the Magmic Battle Forge. What I like about this one is it gives you a little fluff blurb. I dig it. Basically, it is a mobile forge. It's designed to be torn down and moved around like that. So let's see here. After armies are set up, but before the battle begins, you can set up the Magma Battle Forge within 6 inches of a friendly Fyreslayer priest, wholly within your territory, more than 1 inch from any other terrain feature. So that's pretty big. I mean, in terms of where you can place them, right? Because you can set up after armies are set up, before the battle begins. Okay, that's interesting. Wholly within 6 inches of a Fyreslayer priest, wholly within your territory, and more than 1 inch. So if you are in that kind of battle plan where you have that 12, the line that divides the table in half, I think usually you get 12 inches forward. You can actually place him in front of your army, which is interesting. I mean, it gives you a lot, because that makes him 6 inches from the center line. You can set the Magma Battle. That's interesting. Okay, I've never seen, this is a very different kind of terrain feature. So his placement is based upon where your priest is located, not about the table or that, the mission, that kind of stuff, or your enemy's territory. The Herdstone is 12 inches from enemy territory. And the Skaven gnaw holes are within table board edge. But this guy is just wherever your priest is. Set it up within, not wholly within, I'm assuming. It doesn't say wholly. So you can throw him in front of the army and then have the army kind of move around it. That's interesting. So, yeah, I dig it. Does anyone have any thoughts on that one? That one stands out as being completely unique to me. Yeah, Kevin, we're talking about if they're good. Let's see. Glad you got your book early. Can I borrow it? Yes, you can, my friend. Let's see. Always been in corn, looking for a new army. So if you're tunneling your priests, you can't set this up. Thank you, Jack. That is a fantastic point. Yes, so one of the priests, the Rune Smider, they all kind of sound the same. They kind of went with the corn naming convention of just blood, blah, blah, blah. These are Rune, Smite, Volkite. Pick your poison. Yes, if they are off the table, you cannot set this up. So you need one priest on the table before the battle begins. So, going into, yes, we could actually talk about this. So someone asked if there's something negative modifier. So basically, it has the rules here. Molten Blessing. At the start of your hero phase, one friendly Fyreslayer priest within 6 inches of the battlefield can control its magmic energies. If you do so, add 1 to prayer rolls for friendly Fyreslayer priests that are wholly within 18 inches. So you have to have one priest within 6 inches of this thing, but then by doing so, all priests wholly within 18 inches of it can get +1 of their prayers. That's kind of cool. It just there has to be someone near it to activate it, and then everyone in that 18-inch bubble gets a buff. So right away, I see myself wanting to take lots of priests. It's cool. It's a good thing. And then there's an ability called Spending the Forge. Once per battle at the start of your hero phase, one friendly Fyreslayer priest within 6 inches, of course you need one within 6 inches, can spend all of the Forge's energy instead of using Molten Blessing. Okay, and basically, if they do so until the start of your next hero phase, you can reroll save rolls of 1 for friendly Fyreslayer units on the battlefield. However, for the rest of the battle, the Fyreslayer priest can no longer use the Blessing ability we just talked about. So what's interesting about this, and this is kind of what I said when this got previewed for us when I was chatting with my friends, is the gnaw holes give you +1 to casting and prayers. Okay, it's pretty common for Skaven, but the thing is that because of their location and the way that the game plays with objectives and things like that, I find that by turn 2 or 3, the combat and the effectiveness of those buffs to prayers and casting has moved away from the gnaw holes. So they don't really do much mid to late game. And what I like about this is it does the prayers you're going to want them. Wholly within 18 inches is a huge bubble for your heroes, because we already talked about how far forward it can go up the center. And then the fact that if the battle does move away from the effectiveness of this thing, if it's no longer serving its purpose, you just spend the forge and your whole army, it's table wide, gets a buff. And that's a really cool thing. That like it just doesn't have much capacity to be useless. It's not overpowered. I just like it. I mean, does anyone else have any thoughts about it? That's the first thing that I thought of when I was like, oh, it can do something even when the battle, or the perfect, I guess, quote unquote time frame to use it has kind of moved away. So I thought that was pretty cool. Plus it's pretty as heck. I want to show you if you have not seen this. I love this thing. It's pretty. Especially the back of it. Look at that. That is so cool looking. I think the back is much more interesting than the front, to be perfectly honest with you. All the cogs and the pipes and the brickwork, it just looks super cool. I haven't seen much of, I guess there's pictures in the book I can look at, but yeah, I really do like it. But the idea that you can, quote unquote, spend the forge and be able to still get use out of it later on is really enticing to me. Let's see. I like the lore explaining it's a mobile forge. I think all lore for terrain should have some kind of aspect of why it's mobile. Early Ones Jack says, I think it's awesome. You can build a melee list with one priest and burn it turn one. Yeah, you can. I mean, it's, take it or don't take it, but you can do a lot of cool things with it. I enjoy it. Let's see. I want to talk about the units. There's not many units before I talk about these things for some context. Also, this Battletome includes 2 missions, which is fantastic. So we'll get to the lodges here in a second, but I'm trying to do this in a way that makes the most sense. Okay. Let's start chatting about this. Gektron says, what's the lore for the Forge? Basically, if they go on extended campaigns, they have these rapid deployment forges that allow them to invigorate runes and take them straight into battle rather than having to carry the lightest thing possible for long excursions or whatever like that. I don't know. It's kind of cool. It's like a mobile base, and I dig it. Let's see here. So I'm going to talk about the battalions real quick. First of all, one of my negative comments about the book is the Grand Feared. It is, it takes 4 battalions to make this battalion, and there's no way to do it in 2,000 points. I hate these things. I don't like them because I find them very inaccessible. And I like the idea of these big mega armies that are super thematic. I'm just not a fan of this. And all it does for you is your enhanced effect goes off on a 5 instead of a 6. Which is cool, but it's still a chance. If it was always, I'd be like, yeah, let's play some Apocalypse games. Like Captain Andrew said, I get why they're there. I don't know. I like other stuff. I'll be honest with you. Especially because it only has 3 battalions in the entire book. You could have used the 4th one. All they needed to do was make it 0 to 1 option on one more of these, and that would have been doable, I think. Anyway, so we'll go to the ones you can use in a normal game. And they have Lords of the Lodge. What it used to do, basically, so it's an Arc Rune Father, which could be on the Magma Draweth or not, a Rune Master, who's always on foot, a Battlesmith, and 1 unit of Hearth Guard Berserkers, and that's your hero entourage with a Guardian troop, if you will, of Hearth Guard Berserkers, and it used to be, once per game, when you go to roll, turn priority, you get +1 to your roll for every one of the heroes around, so there's a really good chance that you would seize control whenever you wanted to, for 1 turn. In addition to that, for every Hearth Guard Berserker that's within 6 inches of one of those heroes, they get to pile in attack again. But the thing is, it was awkward because if you had a long line of them, and you had a hero on each end, it's model to model within 6 inches, so the center of that unit couldn't attack, but the sides could, and it was really weird. That actually happened to me at the Battle of the Tower event that I talked about, the last one. My first game was against Fyreslayers. He had that. And it was just okay. There's 6 Fyreslayers on the ends. Get to pile in. Anyway. So, if a unit of Hearth Guard Berserkers from this battalion is wholly within 12 inches of a hero from the same battalion at the start of the combat phase, then after that unit has fought in that phase for the first time, when it's your turn to pick a unit to fight, it can be selected. So it's the same thing. They dropped the Seize Initiative ability and just made it so that the Berserkers can pile in and attack again. The thing is, you trade. I guess what I'm saying is, you get a command point. They have better artifacts, a lot of artifacts in this army, so that's a good reason to take it. I think they've kind of backed away from messing with the altering the control for the turn roll, which is good. Yeah, I mean, as far as it goes, the army that I played, the guy brought a full unit of 30 Hearth Guard Berserkers. So him doing that again is devastating, and they've only gotten more choppy, as we'll find out soon. So I think it's fantastic if you like Hearth Guard Berserkers, and you're going to dive heavy into them because it's only one unit. There's not one plus or anything like that, but it makes them a good hammer, right? So below that is the Warrior Kinbad, which is all your basic bros. This is the Kegger train going into fight. Let's see. You can use the Berserk Fury ability for the Volkite Berserkers unit from this battalion twice in the same battle if it is wholly within 12 inches of a Rune Sun from the same battalion. So let's take a look at that and see if it's worth it. I mean, when people were spamming massive units of Volkite Berserkers, that's what a lot of people took the Kinbad. Let's see, Berserk Fury. Once per battle, at the start of the combat phase, you can choose to unleash the unit's Berserk Fury. If you do so until the end of that phase, if a model from this unit is slain before that model is removed from play, you can make a pile-in move and attack with all of its melee weapons it is armed with. And you get to pick between the hand axe or the war pick. We'll go into that when we talk about this war scroll. But basically, the idea of at least 3 units being able to do that twice per game each is actually super tasty. I do like that because that kind of ups your enemy's attrition rate for choosing to engage with you. I actually like that one quite a bit. I think you're going to see it. I don't know if it's going to be 3 max units anymore because they lost their super save, but I like it. And the last one here is the Forge Brethren, which is it includes a Rune Smiter, which could be on a Magma Draweth or not, and 3 units of Auric Hearth Guard. Those are your shooting guys, and we'll talk about those. At the start of the enemy hero phase, you can pick 1 friendly unit wholly within 18 inches of the Auric Hearth Guard from this battalion. If you do so, add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target that unit until the start of your next hero phase. What's interesting is it doesn't have to be from this battalion. It's not like they're all buff in the Rune Smiter, right? Start your phase, pick 1 friendly unit wholly within 18 inches of the Auric Hearth Guard. 18 inches, wholly within 18 inches of any of the units of Hearth Guard from this battalion. That's important because 3 units can kind of spread and you can pick every turn what you want to buff. So you get +1 from here. There's the prayer that can do +1. There's a cool bunch of ways we can talk about that. I think one way you're going to see this army played is you supercharge a Rune Father on a Magma Draweth, give him all the saves, give him all the buffs, and then go watch him annihilate something, and then next turn annihilate something. So we'll get to why I think that, but it's a very defensive one, which makes it a good, counterpoint to the other 2 that are more offensive. So let's see here. Okay, we're going to start jumping into War Scrolls. I'm going to talk about the heroes first, and then we're going to go back and talk about the command traits and abilities and that kind of stuff. I wanted some context for them. Let's see. Auric Rune Father. Now, they changed the Magma Draweth War Scrolls quite a bit, and I'm so happy about that. They are so much easier to read, easier to remember. So let me take a hit of water real quick. Okay. So, Auric Rune Father and Magma Draweth, they have 14 wounds, 4 up save, not shabby. And they got a throwing axe. Everyone's axes universally now are 5 to hit, 5 to wound. I think in the horde numbers they had before, they were seeing too much range damage, and then they weren't as choppy in melee as I think the game designers intended them to be. So they adjusted that. Everyone's much more deadly in melee, worse at shooting, though the axes still exist to throw. He also has the Roaring Fire Stream, which is do not use the attack sequence. Instead, make a die roll and showing the damage total above. So you make a die roll. So starting off at a d6. And basically, you're trying to roll lower than the number of models in the unit that you're attacking. It suffers D3 mortal wounds if it's true, and if you are within 6, so if the enemy is within 6 inches of the Magma Draweth, it does D6 instead. D6 mortal wounds. So that's cool. Rewards you for getting up in there and close. He has the claws and horns. 4 to hit, 3 to wound, -1 rend, and 2 damage. That's super tasty. Blazing Maw. And this is the same across all of these, so I'm just going to go through it once. He has 1 attack, 4 to hit, 2 to wound, -2 rend, and D3 damage. Also super good. Anything with a -2 rend I love. And then my favorite weapon that got strictly better was the Latch Grand Axe. 3 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend, and 3 damage. 3 damage, I love it. Oh, it's so tasty. So the wounds chart, things that are affected by it is the roaring fire stream, the amount of claws and horns attacks, and his speed. Honestly, by the time he gets to super low wounds, he should... It's okay if he gets slow. You know what I mean? He's in combat. He's going to be tearing stuff up. Let's see. Arc Rune Father. Yep, mount. Roaring Fire Stream. So in addition to all these things, the Magma Drawth brings a bunch of rules to it. So it has the Roaring Fire Stream, burst fire on things. Lashing Tail. At the end of the combat phase, roll a dice for each enemy unit in 3 inches. If that roll is less than the number of models in that unit, suffers D3 mortal wounds. Volcanic Blood. Roll a dice each time a wound is allocated to this model that was inflicted by a melee weapon. On a 4-up, the attacking model suffers 1 mortal wound. That is so much clearer and easier than what it used to be as far as like keeping track of how many wounds you're on. It's just, if you hurt me, I roll that many dice. It's pretty quick. It's a lot snappier, you know, when you're doing that stuff on a tabletop. He also has the Stare Down ability, which I don't think the other ones have. No, he had this before too. In your hero phase, pick an enemy unit within 3 inches of this model, subtract D3 from that unit's bravery characteristic, which is awesome. And then the Latchkey Grand Axe's design allows you to break weapons, which I think it did before too. At the end of the combat phase, pick an enemy hero within 3 inches of this model and roll a dice. On a 6, pick one of the melee weapons that is armed with, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made with that weapon for the rest of the battle. So it's pretty rare that's going to happen. It happens on a 6, but it's a free rule that might snap somebody's weapon. They can't use it the rest of the game. I like abilities that affect people for the rest of the game. But it's not going to come up a whole lot, to be honest with you. And then command abilities. You can use this command ability at the start of the hero phase. If you do so, pick a friendly model with this command ability. Until the start of your next hero phase, do not take battle shock tests for friendly Fyreslayers while they are wholly within 18 inches. This is awesome. The Vermin Lord Warpseer Bringer, whatever he is, has something very similar. Just a big bubble, right? Just a big old bubble of battle shock immunity. It's just good. So it has to be wholly within. But what I'm going to do right now is just cover the Magma Drawth specific things. They're all geared towards tearing hordes apart. I'm trying to think. So I just finished painting a unit of 40 Plague Monks. If one of these things dives into those Plague Monks, they're going to get Roaring Fire Stream easily because you can't roll more than 40 on a D6, even on a 3D6. That's his worst profile with that. So you're going to get D6 mortal wounds there if he is within 6 inches. He's going to hit him with the tail for D3 mortal wounds. Yeah, if those Plague Monks, they'll hurt him. He will go down. He'll be spurting volcanic blood at him. And then when it's time to do Battle Shock, he can do the Stare Down, which is subtract D3 from their bravery. So he can just cripple these things. Like if they are left alone to their own devices to a horde, any of these Magma Drawths will hurt them. The Stare just comes with the Rune Father himself, but that's so cool. Yeah, so Battle Shock community is awesome. It's very, I don't know, Rune Fathery, Patriarch, leading you into battle style stuff. For the Rune Sun, most of his things are the same as far as the Magma Drawth rules. I'm going to skip those for now. I think we can all understand why. They're exactly the same. All the Magma Drawths love chewing through hordes. For him, he also has the same profile. I think they all do. That's just a Magma Drawth profile. Yep. Rune Father's Bravery 8. The other two variants are Bravery 7. As far as this stuff goes, he has the Wormslayer Javelin, which he can chuck. 4 to hit, 3 to wound, -1 rend and D3 damage, which makes it probably the best ranged weapon with a full profile in the army. Also has a throwing axe, 5/5 up as everyone else. Let's see. For his unique melee weapons, Ancestral War Axe is 3 attacks, 3 to hit, 4 to wound, no rend, and D3 damage. That's all right. It's all right. And the javelin, when you pick the javelin, you can throw it as well as stab people with it. And that's just 1 attack, 3 up, -1, 1 damage. So I think the javelin used to be the better choice. I'm not sure about that anymore. Although I don't really care for either of his melee weapons, to be honest with you. Skipping the generic Magma Draweth abilities, he has one called Vying for Glory. You can reroll hit rolls for attacks made by this model if there are any other friendly Auric Rune Sons. It's a keyword, so they can be on foot. Within 6 inches of this model, not wholly within. So if you have another Rune Sun on Magma Draweth or one on foot, they kind of buff each other because they all want to fight to show pop that they're better. And they deserve to be heirs, which is kind of a fun one. What's interesting is it doesn't specify the rider and like that, so I assume that applies to the Magma Draweth as well for his claws and horns and stuff like that. That's cool. The Javelin's unique ability adds add 2 to the damage characteristic for the Javelin for attacks made with the model's Wormslayer Javelin that target a monster. Okay, so and it just says the it says just the generic weapons that I think would apply both in melee and range because he can chuck it. All right, for attacks made with a targeted monster. Yeah, it doesn't say about phase like in the shooting phase or melee. It just straight up +2 damage. That's kind of cool. And then his command ability. You can use this command ability at the start of your charge phase. If you do so, pick one friendly Magma Draweth that is within 12 inches of a friendly model with its command ability. After that unit makes a charge move in the charge phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of that model and roll a dice. On a 2-up, the enemy suffers D6 mortal wounds. Okay. So he wants Magma Draughts to charge in hard, right? Molten Battering Ram is the name of the ability. That makes sense. If you do go the route of having 2 Rune Suns near each other to buff each other up, you should be able to easily charge one in. Right, use the command ability on each other or themselves, doesn't matter, and then both charge in. Interesting. You know, on a 2-up, suffering D6 mortal wounds, whatever you just charged into. Super cool. Just beware that you can, if you destroy the unit, you're just kind of out there in the open. So yeah, I think he's definitely going to be the choice for Magma Draweth fans for sure. I'm just going to look at the chat real quick, see what you all are saying. Jack says he likes the changes, honestly. Like the idea of running a pack of Rune Suns vying for each other. Oh, yeah. Totally. I dig it. Schnoodly says weapon breaking sounds super strong against factions like that one big guy. But I don't know, something new. No, it is incredibly powerful. It just goes off on a 6 when that specific dude's within 3, so it won't happen a lot, but it is really good when it does. Okay. All right. Gonna move on, and the last Magma Draweth unit is the Rune Smiter on Magma Draweth, and these are all made from the same kit. If you're not familiar, when you buy, say for example, the Star Collecting box for Fyreslayers, you get a Magma Draweth kit, and you can choose to put one of the dudes on the Magma Draweth, and the other 2 variants, the Rune Father, Rune Son, or Rune Smiter, are on foot. There's like lower halves for all of them, so you get a grand total of 3 models from that kit. So anyway, Rune Smiter has all of the same Magma Draweth stuff. He has a basic throwing axe, 5/5 up like everybody else. For his weapons, he has a Latch axe, which is 1 attack, 3 to hit, 3 to wound, and 2 damage. Cool when it goes off. A lot of times it won't. Runic Iron is 2 attacks, 3 up, 4 up, 1 damage. So let's see here. So he is either armed with a Runic Iron or a Forge Key, and we'll get to what the Forge Key does for him in a second. Lashing Tail, Volcanic Blood, those are all the same. So he has 2 kind of special things. He has a Grand Ritual of Awakening, Once per battle during hero phase, you can say this model has consumed a nugget of gold. If you do so, add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target friendly Fyreslayer units wholly within 12 inches of this model until the start of your next hero phase. So, we're counting up the number of ways that you can get +1 to your save roll. Because so far we have, the prayer. You can get reroll save rolls of 1 from the forge being expended. Here's another +1. It happens once per game, but it's for everyone wholly within 12 of him. So that's kind of cool. In addition, he also has Runic Empowerment, which is his kind of prayer that he has built in, which is, it goes off on a 3. Pick a friendly Fyreslayer's unit wholly within 12 inches of this model, or wholly within 18 inches of this model if it has the forge key. So you lose a weapon profile and you gain a bigger bubble for this ability. You can reroll wound rolls for attacks made by that unit until the start of your next hero phase. So this is the ability that used to be a very passive one for them. They used to just have it. Pick a unit nearby and they get it. They've turned it into a prayer, which I think fits with the rest of the design for the faction, to be honest with you. Turned into a prayer. He can do this, or one of the other ones from the book. And it's cool. I mean, obviously picking a unit wholly within 12 or 18 if you go with the forge key, and getting reroll wound rolls. I would say play around with it. For this big guy, it might be worth to go with the forge key. Drop that weapon profile. He's not going to be a big melee guy anyway. And get the bigger bubble. Whereas the guy on foot, the Rune Smider on foot, who can teleport and tunnel in with people, you might not need the bigger bubble because he's going to be hip to hip with those other guys. So we'll get into that. And then there are... Okay, yeah, we're still at the hero section. So there's Fuel Grimnir, who is this is basically the Shadespire set. Or Warhammer Underworlds, I'm sorry, set for this. And for this one, he's kind of like a Rune Father on foot, I believe. So he has the Latch Key Grand Axe, 3 attacks, 3 to hit, 3 to wound, -1 rend, 3 damage, same thing. On foot, he's 4 inches. I think they're all 4 inches when they're on foot, if I'm not mistaken. Lots of 4s. 4-up save. Grimnir's Blessing. Roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to Fuel Grimnir. While this model is within 3 inches of his chosen axe's unit on a 5-up, that wound or mortal wound is negated. So he likes being near his unit from Underworlds. That makes sense. He also has the stare down, so it's subtract D3 from something's bravery nearby. He has the same weapon breaker ability. And his command ability is, until the end of that phase, add 1 to, if you do so, pick a friendly model with this command ability. Add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Volstarg units while they are wholly within 12 inches of that model. So Volstarg is a lodge. We'll get into that in a little bit. And he's from there, so they keyworded him to really synergize with that specific lodge. That's cool. You know, he's not useless anywhere else. He's still a Rune Father with a huge axe. But basically, yeah, he just add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Volstarg units while they are wholly within 12 inches of that model. That's cool. Of which, if you take him with his buddies down here, that's awesome. Now, they did make a provision when it came to lodges. We looked at that during Allegiance abilities. You can take, say your army is from a different lodge and then also include these guys. It's just that you can't have both keywords, so he will not gain another lodge's keyword. And so the synergies will just be between these two. But you can take them, which is cool. Let's see. And the chosen axes. Add 1 to rune rolls for attacks made by this unit, while the hero guy, Fuel Grimnir, is within 3 inches. So if they move as a unit, he can give them +1s to hit. They natively have +1 to wound. And once per battle at the start of the combat phase, they have the Berserk Fury, so they can fight as they're dying again. Would I take them? I don't know. Let's look at the points. Fuel Grimnir. So you take them as a whole, right? Even though they're separate units for 200 points. How many guys are in this? Has 3 models. Ugh. I don't know if I would, because they're gonna burn up real fast. That's 6 wounds amongst them. It's up to you. You know, if you want to use them, that's cool. That's cool. They're a fun little like package, you know, just have like going towards the back line. My first thought when I see this is it's 2 free blood type points for any corn player because they're so easy to remove. Okay, then we're going to get into the other heroes on foot, and then we'll go backward and look at the command abilities and traits and that kind of stuff. Oh man, there's a lot of heroes. I forgot this is like such a hero dense army. There's only 3 units that aren't heroes. Okay, let's do this. Marty, what'd you miss? We're just getting into talking about the heroes. We've talked about allegiance abilities and some other units. Universally, everyone's throwing axe is 5 up to hit, 5 up to wound. Yeah, I dig it. So, Auric Runefather, he inherits a lot of the same things that the one in the Magma Drawth did, as far as like the stare down's the same, the weapon breaker is the same. If he's in combat with a hero on a 6, he can snap their weapon and they lose a melee attack. It's just him with his throwing axe and the Latchkey Grand Axe, which is my favorite weapon profile in Warhammer, which is 3 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend, and 3 damage. And let's see, his command ability, which is different than the one on Magma Drawth. If you do so, pick a friendly model's command ability, add 1 to charge rolls for friendly Fyreslayer units wholly within 12 inches of this model to the end of the phase. Again, you got to remember, all the units in this army, because of the prayer, have the potential to run in charge. So you're in a situation here where you could use the rune for speed, give them all +2 inches. Now they can run in charge and get +1 their charge. That's awesome. I dig it. Notice there is no stipulation about how many times you can use this. So if you need to land a charge and you want to long bomb something, you got a stack of command points and you're just like, what else am I going to use these on? You can burn them to do that. Below him is the Auric Runeson, which has the same javelin and a little axe he can wield. I'm not a big fan of the model with the way he holds his axes. He kind of looks like he doesn't know how to use an axe. Anyway, has the same Vying for Glory. If there's another Runeson, it's keyworded, so it's Magma Drawth or not. They get to reroll hit rolls. You can reroll hit rolls for attacks made by this model, which is great. Javelin, even when he's on foot, still does +2 damage to monsters. His command ability, if he's on foot, is basically you pick him or somebody with his command ability. If you do so, add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made by friendly Fyreslayer units wholly within 12 inches of that model until the end of the phase. So he is +1 to wound. We'll talk about how great that is in a little bit. So Runefather on foot is for charges, Runefather on sons for wounding. Interesting. Okay. They're very different from their Magma Drawth variants in terms of the command ability usage. Next is the Battlesmith, who used to give everyone rerolls for their save rolls, as well as when he would die, people can stand near the dead banner dude and defend it. So Icon of Grimnir. In your hero phase, you can say this model is raising its Icon of Grimnir. If it does so, add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target friendly Fyreslayer units wholly within 12 inches of this model. So that is yet another way to get +1 save. We can very easily see this army becoming tough again in a different kind of way. Rather than having multiple save rolls, now we're talking about straight toughness and 2 wounds each. But there's a lot more synergy involved in this than there is with the way it used to be. Let's see. However, if you do so until the start of your next hero phase, friendly Fyreslayer units wholly within 12 inches, this model cannot retreat, which does matter. It's important. Let's see. None shall defile the icon. If this model is slain before it is removed from play, friendly Fyreslayer units wholly within 12 inches of this model can swear to protect the Phylon icon. If the unit does so, it cannot make normal moves and charge moves for the rest of the battle, but you can reroll hit and wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by that unit. So what you're going to have is someone like him going towards an objective. Let him die. You know, he's going to be very aggressive with the Battlesmith. Let the Battlesmith die. And then the unit that he has walked up to the objective with is just going to plant themselves there. That's awesome. So we're up to, I think, 2 or 3 different ways to buff the save rolls between the once per game ability from the Magma Drawth Rune Smiter, the Prayer, reroll ones from this Forge being spent. That's pretty great. As far as another hero, Auric Rune Master, he fights like an old man, like all good wizards do. He has he has both the staff and the runic icon. Staff is 1 attack, 4 to hit, 3 to wound, -1 rend, and D3 damage. It's the same attack profile that every frickin' wizard in this game has. It's the old man stick. And the runic icon is 2 attacks, 3s to hit, 4s to wound, no rend, and 1 damage. As far as abilities, so he used to have this super derpy and janktastic ability where, like, before the game begins, your enemy picks a unit and they get like some kind of buff. They get better, and then over the course of the game, if he ends his movement phase too close to that unit, everyone gets to kill that thing super good. The idea being, one of your enemy's units has Urgold. If he gets near it, he sniffs it out, and then everyone gets that guy. And it was thematic, but really annoying to keep track of. Yeah. So that's all there was to it. It was one of those things that became frustrating when I went to that event in Battle for the Tower, just because if you don't remember it and the game starts, your opponent has to be like, well, I would have chosen differently based on how I had Urgold or whatever. They've changed all that. It's much better. Let's dive into it. So in your hero phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 12 inches of this model and roll 2 dice. You can pick one enemy unit within 12 inches. Roll 2 dice. If you roll at least 1 6 for the rest of the battle, you can re-roll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by friendly Fyreslayer units that target that unit. That's melee or ranged. If you roll 2 or more 6s for the rest of the battle, you can re-roll hit and wound rolls of 1 for attacks made by Fyreslayer units. It happens every round. I don't see anything that says you can't try it like multiple times on an enemy. Nothing says like if you do it again, it negates the first one. So there's no reason not to keep trying if he's in there. So I guess you're just fishing for minor buffs to get better at hurting somebody, which is interesting. Tokens are going to be important for that, like, marking what units you've chanted that thing on. Interesting. Volcano's Call is his unique prayer. It goes off on a 3. If it's answered, pick a terrain feature within 18 inches of this model. Roll a dice for each model within 1 inch of that terrain feature. For each roll of a 6, that model's unit suffers 1 mortal wound. In addition, until your next hero phase, that terrain has the deadly scenery roll in addition to anything else. So, hello Sylvaneth Wildwood. If you tag 1 Wildwood, all the 3 in that war scroll are deadly for everyone. Interesting stuff. It's on a model by model basis, and it's on a 6, so it could be either really, really good or super ineffective. He's one that I can see taking because you just want more priests. You just want more priests, straight up. And also he does carry the buffs around. Like, honestly, if every turn you're rolling 2 dice on the unit, eventually you will get at least 1 6 to be able to reroll hit rolls of 1 against a unit. It's cool. He's not great, but he's certainly a heck of a lot better than he used to be, where it had that really like weird flavor rule. I like him mainly because he's a priest. That's honestly the biggest thing. And we have 3 left, and these are the fun 3. They really are. Grimwrath Berserker. He is, so if you don't know, he used to just be super deadly, and that has not changed because we're going to talk about why. Has a normal throwing axe, 5/5 up, like everybody else. So he has the Firestorm Great Axe, 4 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -2 rend, and 2 damage each, which is super good. -2 rend is so tasty. Unstoppable Berserker. Roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to this model. Add 1 to the roll if there are any enemy units within 3 inches. On a 6-up, that wound or mortal wound is negated. So if he's in combat, like he should always be, gets a 5-up shrug. And that is after his 4-up save. Battle Fury. At the end of the combat phase, if this model is within 3 inches of an enemy unit, roll a dice. On a 2-up, it makes a pile-in move with this. Make a pile-in move with this model, and then attack with all its melee weapons. So That's super sexy. On a 2-up, make a pile at the end of the combat phase. Every combat phase. It just says the combat phase. Doesn't say yours. Doesn't say your opponent's. This guy will just keep killing things every turn that he is allowed to be in combat. And his last rule is dead but not defeated. If this model is slain before it is removed from play, it can make a pile and move and then attack with all its melee weapons. I love it. And spoiler alert, we're going to go to the command traits and artifacts, and there's ways to get him to pile and attack even more. That is the nastiest profile ever, and I just think it's the greatest. So he's super deadly. You could easily, I don't know, you could easily take 2 of these and just have him be a threat. Just scary. And I like that. Let's see. And then below him is the Doomseeker. He used to be hard to get, if I'm not familiar. I think he came out with either Silver Tower or the other one, whatever the other RPG game was. And he went away for a while, and they brought him back as an online exclusive. He's a beautiful model. I think I painted one of them up. And so he's another one kind of like the Grimwrath Berserker, but not quite as punchy. And so for him, throwing axe like everyone else, he has the Runic War Iron, which is 3 attacks, 3 is to hit, 4 is to wound, no rend, 1 damage, and the Doomseeker Axe, which is 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1 rend and 1 damage. Abilities: Oathbound. At the start of the first battle round, pick 1 enemy unit. This model is sworn to destroy. At the end of the combat phase, if this model is within 3 inches of that unit, this model can make a pile-in and attack with all its melee weapons. I see. So at the beginning of the first battle round, he picks the target, and then he just gets really good at killing that one target. Runic Power. Add 1 to the damage characteristic of this model's melee weapons if it has 1 wound allocated to it. Add 2 to the damage characteristic of this model's melee weapons instead if it has 2 or more wounds allocated to it. He's only got 5 total, so like, I don't know. He's going to be really easy to kill. I don't see a lot of use for the Doomseeker unless you're trying to fill up a hero slot. Hopefully he's like cheap as chips. Let's see, Doomseeker, 100 points, and so is the Grimwrath Berserker. I don't see a contest, but he's there if you want him and you like to use him in the model. He's a good looking model. I'll give you that. And the last one is probably the All-Star. He was the All-Star last edition, or last Battletome. He's going to be again. And that's the Auric Rune Master. He's just like the Rune Master from the other one. You can either take the Runic Iron or the Forge Key, which buffs his spell. Or his not spell, his prayer. He has the same Runic Empowerment thing. So it's a prayer that goes off on a 3. Pick a unit within 12, wholly within 12, or if he has the Forge Key, wholly within 18, and they can reroll failed wound rolls. So it's exactly the same without the Magma Drawth stuff. What makes him different is the magic tunneling, which is when you're setting up, when you're deploying your army, basically you take him, you choose a unit, and they go off and they're set up off the table as one. I think that's 1 drop from my understanding. And then anytime during the end of the movement phase, you pop him up. You can set up this model anywhere in the battlefield more than 9 inches from enemy units. And then you have to set up the unit that joined them wholly within 12 and more than 9 from an enemy. So, and that's exactly what it did before. I don't see anything super different. There's no danger to it. It just is an alternate deployment. And I think that's awesome. So that's the heroes. Okay. So we run the gambit from Ignore Battle Shock. Oh, sorry. He's the Ignore Battle Shock one. Yeah, Ignore Battle Shock. Magma Draughts have a nasty charge. Rune Spider's the same on foot. Chosen Axes. Yeah, I got a whole bunch of stuff. So let's talk about those command traits, because now we have some context. We can flip back and forth and take a better look at them. I think that makes more sense. Already went through prayers. Okay, so let's talk command traits first. There's a lot of ways to build this army. You can go Magma Drawth heavy. You can go minimum size Volkite squads and then have a lot of Hearth Guard, like the elite dudes. We'll talk about all those, but want to reiterate that there's a lot of ways to build this stuff. So the things that I say are not like the best synergies or combos. My name is Doug, and I came in 5th at the one event that I went to. So I'm nobody. Fury of the Fyreslayers, add 1 to charge rolls for friendly Fyreslayer units wholly within 18 inches of the general. Remember, that'll be super awesome when you combine it with the +1 to charge rolls that the Rune Father on foot has, and you can spend command points for that one as much as possible, as much as you want, I mean. So that's a lot of bonuses to charge in a faction that has prayers and access to run and charge. Honor of the Ancestors, do not take battle shock tests for friendly Fyreslayer units wholly within 12 inches of this general. Again, there's a few ways to mitigate battle shock in this army. That's a fantastic one. Spirit of Grimnir. Oh, I should clarify. These are all any kind of Rune Father or Rune Son. That's Magma, Draweth, or not can take this. Spirit of Grimnir. If the general is on the battlefield, when you roll to activate an Gold rune, it has the enhanced effect on a 5 instead of a 6. Keep in mind that command ability is what the entire Mega Battalion gives you. So I don't know, man. Like, just one more axe to the Mega Battalion being dumb. That's a cool ability just to have. Why not? Blood of the Berserker. This was my favorite one in the last game. So, once per battle in the combat phase, after this general has fought in that phase for the first time, if they are within 3 inches of an enemy unit, they can immediately pile in and make a pile-in move and attack with all their melee weapons they are armed with for a second time. I love that. My question, and someone in the chat can answer me. So this is a command ability. If they're on a Magma Drawth, does the Magma Drawth also get to attack? Because it says specifically the general, and I think it does. At least that's how I played it in the last edition. If there's an FAQ that clarifies that, can someone tell me that in the chat? But either way, remember, Latch Key Grand Axe does 3 damage. It's so tasty. I love it. Also, you can make your Grimwrath Berserker your general if you just don't see any other traits that interest you. So he can, he'll pile in and attack, use the command trait, pile and attack again, and then at the end of the combat phase on a 2-up, he piles in and attacks, and then if he dies, that kind of stuff. So that'd be kind of fun. Iron Will the Guardian, add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target this general, which is good. I mean, they all have a 4-up, and plus all the ways we talked about getting more. And then Destroyer of Foes. Add 1 to the damage characteristic of this general's melee weapon. So, so that Latchkey Grand Axe can go to damage 4. The other weapons, I don't know. They're not, individually, they're not great. Oh, yeah, it's only the Rune Father. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you so much. So, yeah, you get to pile on attack with that Latchkey Grand Axe again, but that's still sweet. So that's the command traits. As the ones that stand out to me mostly are the charge one, because that's just good to stack with the Rune Father and Magma Drawth. Battle Shock is going to be important for this army. And maybe the Gold one, where the enhanced effect goes off on a 5. It just increases the chance of cool things happening. It makes that die roll that you have to do that normally doesn't go off a little more likely. It makes it a little more fun, I would probably go for that one just for the sheer, is it going to happen? And there's actually a reasonable chance that it will. And then they have command traits for the Rune Masters and Auric Rune Smiters. So these are all your priests. Fire Mantle, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units while they are within 3 inches of this general. You don't want enemies within 3 inches of this general, I promise you. None of those priests are great at fighting. At the start of the first battle round, you receive D3 additional command points. That exists in Beasts of Chaos as well for Thunderscorn. And it's amazing, because if you were to take this, remember some of those command abilities, they don't have caps on them, like the charge one. You can just pour those extra ones that you weren't planning on anyway into that. So that's cool. That's just always going to be a solid thing. More command points is good. Oathsayer, add 1 to bravery characteristics of friendly Dwarden units while they're wholly within 18 inches of this model. What's interesting is it keyworded the word Dwarden. So Dispossessed or Keratin Overlords can also get +1 bravery, which is about the nicest thing that GW has done to either of those two factions since since they were released. Yeah, that's cool. I would say I like that. It's a cool way to integrate other stuff. I like it. For no reason. It just exists. It could have been Fyreslayers for the exact same money. Ashbeard. This general knows 2 prayers from the Zargon blessing table instead of 1. That's sweet. We've already talked about the effectiveness. What do we got? The run and charge one, Searing Heat. Yeah, those are all pretty great. So, Fire Steel, Weaponsmith. Improve the rend characteristic of this general's weapon by 1. You don't want them in combat, I promise. Master Priest. Once per battle at the start of your hero phase, if this general is on the battlefield, you can activate 1 gold rune that has already been activated instead of 1 that has not yet been activated. So you can double up on that table, which is I was excited about. So if you use the speed one to get into position, and your opponent didn't respond with positioning the way you were expecting, or if you're running forward and they're a shooting army and they're all tunneled up, you can use the run one again instead of choosing something else. And that's awesome because it keeps your options open for later. It's not like I ran this turn with using the speed one. I'm still not in range to do what I want to do. I guess I'll have to burn one of the other ones, just to pick something for the turn. No. This time you get to choose the speed one again and keep your other options open for when you actually get into combat. So that's a pretty good one. And I'm glad they had one that really uses that table in an interesting way. So for them, I think the standouts are D3 command points is just huge. Maybe the 2 prayer one, if you dig it. And then the once per battle, you can reuse an gold rune. I think those are all super, super good. As far as... Well, the other stuff, we'll get into their stuff because they have their own artifacts, I think. Yeah, they do. Heirlooms of the Lodge. So this is artifacts for Rune Fathers and Rune Sons only. So these are melee-focused characters, and we'll be flipping back and forth and taking a look at what we can do with them. So we have Magnetized Runes. Add 2 to charge rolls for the Bearer, which is great. I mean, everything about the Rune Son wants it because when his Magma Draweth with his command ability gets into charges on a 2 of the D6 mortal wounds, that's great. The Rune Father on foot does his +1 for charges as his command ability, and it's stackable. That's awesome. So, and obviously you can do Fury the Fyreslayer, add 1 to charge rolls for friendly Fyreslayers, and the bearer of that command ability is still also within 18 inches of himself. So he would get +3 to his charge rolls. That's pretty nice. Draught of the Magmalt Ale. Once per battle, at the start of the combat phase, the bearer can drink this potion. If they do so, double the attack's characteristics of all the melee weapons they are armed with until the end of that phase. Now, here's an interesting thing. At the start of the combat phase, you pop the Draught, right? Let's say you have that sweet Latchkey Grand Axe of a Rune Father, and you get to double your attacks. And so he would go from Latchkey Grand Axe from 3 to 6 attacks. 3 to 6 attacks. And it says to the end of that phase. So if he were to be armed with, say, the Blood of the Berserker, twice in that combat phase, he will get to pile in an attack wielding the 6 attack Latchkey Grand Axe. Because this is once per battle, and this is till the end of the phase. So that's a cool little synergy. If you want your Rune Father to get in there and just mess some stuff up, he will do that. Syntax, hello. We're just going through a new Battletome that came out or is coming out. Drakeslayer. Once per battle in your shooting phase, instead of making an attack with the bearer's fire steel throwing axe, you can say they are throwing Drakeslayer. If you do so, pick an enemy monster within 8 inches of the bearer and roll a dice. On a 6, that monster suffers 3d6 mortal wounds. I don't really like taking artifacts that require die rolls. This one requires a 6. I'm not a huge fan of that. But yeah. Syntax is Fyreslayer is beginner friendly. They are, rules-wise, they're very expensive to purchase as an army. I think. We'll get to that. We'll get to points later, how much it costs to actually buy an army. But I'm liking all the rules I see so far. Next is Obsidian Glo Helm. At the start of your hero phase, roll a dice if the bearer is on the battlefield. On a 4-up, you receive 1 additional command point. So we could take the You have your general be a priest, and he gets D3 plus ones, and then you give the artifact for your army to a rune father or a rune son, and every turn you have a chance of getting even more if you want to look forward to a command point farm. Need to know him. And the one time it works, though, absolutely. Yes, that's 6. This suffers 3d6 mortal wounds on the monster. It's going to be tight. But, I don't know. I would definitely take it in, like, Path to Glory. Because when it happens, it's going to be epic. But probably not a whole lot after that. Shimmering Blade at the start of the battle. Pick one of the bear's melee weapons. Improve that weapon's rend characteristic by 1. In addition, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with that weapon is 6, add 1 to the damage characteristic of that weapon for the attack. So that's also a good one. If you wanted to stack that with Blood of the Berserker or Destroy Your Foes, add 1 of the damage characteristic. You could stack a lot of things there if you want to get a really melee massive hero. And the last one is Axe of Grimnir. You can reroll hit rolls for attacks made by the bearer, which is good. It's very simple and straightforward, very easy to remember. As far as my favorite combos, anything with Blood of the Berserker, I love. So any of these things that like really make you off the charts choppy. I love the Draught of the Magma Ale. Axe of Grimnir is simple enough. It's just so cool. I just dig it. Yeah, that's all I can think of. The command point 1 is optional if that's something you find yourself starved for. It's really a decent take. Let's see. Now we're going to look at artifacts for the priests. Oh, wait. Did I skip one? I must have. Oh, yeah. So it's there are specific artifacts for the Berserker and the Doomseeker. Like I said, I'm really not a fan of the Doomseeker, so I'm really going to be looking at these with an eye of the Berserker. The first one is called Beast Slayer. Pick one of the bear's melee weapons. If the hit roll for an attack made with that weapon that targets an enemy scores a hit, that attack inflicts 2 hits on the target rather than 1. So really likes to hit monsters. The cool thing about the Berserker is you can really give them a purpose, right? You can put him on the table and say, this is my monster hunter, and just have him worry just about that. And that'll be really cool. So, it's not like you're deciding something for the entire army. It makes sense. Bracers of Ember Iron, add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target the bear. The Berserker had is it a 4-up? Yeah, it's a 4-up, so you can give him a 3-up save, which is pretty spicy. And then he also has his 5-up shrug if he's in combat. He's up here. Yeah. That's not bad. And then Rune of Blazing Fury. Once per battle at the start of the combat phase, you can awaken the Rune of Blazing of Fury. If you do so, you can reroll hit and wound rolls for attacks made by the bear until the end of that phase. So if you know your Berserker's about to die, you can make that nice, sweet Firestorm Great Axe reroll for the first time he piles in, the second, and then if he dies, he gets to do it again. So he wouldn't reroll the one when he dies. That would be the end of the phase. Interesting stuff. I really like it. The thing about the artifacts for the Berserker and the Doomseeker is that when you build an army, you get one artifact just to take. And the problem is, like, unless you start taking battalions, that's probably the one artifact you're going to have. So I'll have to see when lists start getting designed by Fyreslayer players with the new points and stuff like that, how many artifacts are you realistically getting? Because if you only get 1, maybe 2, do you want to use this one? Wouldn't you like to use something else? Or if you take one of the lodges, you're forced to take a specific one. I don't know. I think, speaking broadly about all artifacts and command traits, it's going to come down to how good are the lodges, and if you go without a lodge, how awesome can you make these combinations of things? That's always been the problem with the Beasts of Chaos that I had, was like, Gavespawn, I think, is the most powerful of the, their temple equivalent or Stormhost equivalent. But the problem is I choose that and I give up their D3 extra command points, that kind of stuff. So it's a give and take. A lot of cost benefit analysis there. Next up are the artifacts from the Forge Temple, which is for the priests, rune masters and rune smithers. We're going to keep flipping back and forth because we're going to compare their command traits with that. So we have the Salamander Cloak. Roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to the bear on a 5-up. Wound is negated. That's not bad. I mean, they're not offensive. Boosting their defense is not a terrible idea. Ash Cloud Rune. The bear can attempt to unbind 2 spells in enemy hero phase in the same manner as a wizard. I like that one. The fact that it's not just 1, it's 2. It's a significant boost in attempts. Not bad at all. The thing is, like, anymore, if you're playing competitively, and this is only if you're playing competitively, when someone brings a magic heavy army, they have so many bonuses that 2 basic attempts are just not gonna do it, right? If you're going against like a Tzeentch army, this generally means nothing because they have so many bonuses to cast, and the Lords of Change are ridiculous. So your mileage will vary. If it's a basic narrative game, that'll definitely matter, and that's awesome. Volatile Brazier. The bearer can attempt to summon 2 magmic invocations in the same turn. Normally you can only do 1. Again, we're going to talk about those later, but that's super cool. I super dig it. If that's, this is actually really good if you want to save some money, frankly. Buy the Not Endless Spells box and take this, because then you're putting more points on the table than you have to have models. That's not a bad idea. I kind of dig it. Just subscribe. Thank you so much, Hagbean. That means so much to me. Any cool battalions? We covered those. You can watch that again. Honestly, there's very few battalions, and I really like the Warrior Kinbad because it lets you guys pile in and attack twice a game before they die, and I kind of like that. So that's super cool stuff. Going back here to the artifacts. Ancestor Helm. If an enemy unit fails a battle shock test within 12 inches of the bear, add D3 to the number of models that flee. That's super cool, just punishing people for running away. Emberstone Rune. Add 1 to invocation rolls made for the bear. Now, invocation. Is that specifically... I think that one's specifically for the summoning. Invocation, because the other ones are prayers. So I believe, 2 magmic invocations. So this is a +1 if you want to go heavy with the endless prayers, whatever you want to call them. That gives you a bonus to them, and that's actually pretty good because they don't. What do they cast on? We have a 3, a 3. Oh, they're all on 3s. Okay, so you can make it a 2-up. That's cool. But, and they are repeatable and that kind of stuff. I dig it. Next is the Draweth Helm. You can reroll hit rolls for attacks made with claws and horns by friendly magma Draughts within 6 inches of the bearer. He's really, really cool. Interesting. So basically, what would be really cool is if you're going for Magma Drawth army, having him in the middle of 2 Rune Suns on Magma Draughts, because they can collectively share that command ability that lets them do D6 mortal wounds on a charge, on a successful charge. And then with him in the middle, he's giving them this aura buff of reroll hit rolls for attacks made with claws and horns. So that's kind of awesome. I dig it. Jate92, no, we haven't gotten there yet. We're talking about the heroes and their command abilities, and then we're going to dive into the units. So, if you're going Magma Drawth heavy, I would definitely suggest... was it Rune Smider on a Magma Drawth, and then 2 Rune Suns. That little 3-man blob is going to mess some stuff up. Especially if one of them has Blood of the Berserker, or any of the things that made them super fighty that we talked about before. What's interesting is the artifacts for the priests don't really seem to interact or overlap a whole lot with their command abilities, which is a good thing in some respects. So that's kind of cool. And then we move on to, lastly, is the Icons of Grimnir, and then we're out of the hero stuff, I promise. And this is for the Battlesmith, the guy who can hoist his banner up and give everyone +1 to their save within 12 inches. And if he dies, they all stand around him and fight. And basically, he can choose what the artifact does in addition to that banner ability. So it says the range of this Battlesmith's Icon of Grimnir and none shall defile it. is 18 inches instead of 12, so it's that same effect but bigger bubble, which might be legitimately a useful thing. That's +1 to their save if they're wholly within 18. The bearer can attempt to unbind... Sorry, the next one is called Icon of Grimnir's Condemnation. I like Condemnation. The bearer can attempt to unbind one spell in the enemy hero phase in the same manner as a wizard. In addition, if the bearer unbinds a spell, roll a dice, and on a 2-up, the caster suffers a mortal wound. I like it. I feel the same way about that one as I do with the Ash Cloud, as far as, if you don't have modifiers to that unbinding, it doesn't always do a whole lot when you're playing mostly competitive games. But the idea of slapping a wizard for trying is a really cool idea. And the last one is the Nulcidian icon, which is each time a friendly Fyreslayer unit wholly within 12 of the bearer is affected by a spell or an endless spell, you can roll a dice. If you do so on a 4-up, ignore the effects of that spell or endless spell on that unit. That is freaking good. That is actually super good, and one that should be strongly considered, because the idea of you have this 12-inch bubble, right, moving a moving set of units that half the time is not affected by a spell. It's not an unbind. It's not, stuff like that. It's half. So that's actually really good. I'm just trying to think, because like Hallowed Knights do that on a 6+. Like, this is actually super great. And then when you combine all the buffs that you can get from outside of his banner, it's really, really cool. I think it's Al S. Question, can you reroll hit rolls for the Magma Draweth Rune Sons vying for glory? Let me see how it's worded. Vying for glory. Can reroll hit rolls for attacks made by this model if there are any other friendly. Reading it, I don't see why you couldn't. But that might be something they clarify in the FAQ in a week or two. That's interesting, because vying for glory doesn't operate the same way as like Artifacts does. So that's one for the FAQ for sure. So yeah, I'm actually super down with the Nulcidian. I kind of like that one quite a bit. The thing is, in the Stormcast book, none of their like special banners really interest me, but this, like the artifact ones, like the basic banners were cool. The Comet one was cool, and the Teleport was great, but these are super useful. And then if your army has Magma Draughts, which they almost always will, because come on, they're the coolest things ever. One of them gets to pick a Magma Draweth trait. And so, let's see. So these also are interesting. Was there 6 of them? Yep. So, Cindercrest Youngblood. When you use this model's Lashing Tail ability, subtract 1 from the dice roll. Basically, this modifies that Lashing Tail where you're trying to roll lower than the number of people near you. Use -1 from it, so you're more effective against more elite units. That's cool. Flame Scale Youngblood. After this model has made a charge move, pick one enemy unit within one of this model and roll a number of dice equal to the charge roll for that charge move. For a 6, for each 6, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So if you rolled a 7-inch charge, you're going to roll 7 dice. 6s are mortal wound, which would of course stack with the Rune Sons command point that lets you do D6 mortal wounds when on a successful charge and a 2-up. So that's cool. More wounds. If the unmodified wound roll for an attack... Sorry, this is the Fire Claw Adult. If the unmodified wound roll for an attack made with this mount's melee weapons is 6, that attack has a rend characteristic of -3. How many attacks does a freaking Magma Draweth make? They're all the same, so we'll just pick one. So Claws and Horns, they start off with 6 attacks, and the Blazing Maul would also count because it's still the mount attacks is 1. So any of those having rend 3 is super nasty. I like that. Lava Tongue Adult. I like that. When you use this model's Roaring Fire Stream, subtract 1 from the dice roll. Okay, so it's the same thing. It's modifying how many... It makes it better against more elite units. Coalheart Ancient. Worsen the rend characteristic of melee weapons that target this model by 1 to a minimum of 0. So that's cool. If you want a defensive one, you can definitely go with the 5-up save here and reducing rend. Honestly, I think this army is so aggressive that even though I think that has its place and its uses, I would still choose something more aggressive. And then back here, down here at the bottom is the last one, Ashbourne Ancient. You can reroll save rolls of 1 for attacks that target this model and friendly Magma Draughts within 6 inches. So if you are going the Magma Drawth blob, because it affects other Magma Draughts nearby, that's not a bad choice. Reroll save rolls of 1. You still get that same ability from burning the forge. And there's other ways to get modifiers. It's not my favorite, but it's not useless because it does affect everyone nearby. My favorite ones for the Magma Drawth, the Flame Scale Youngblood, where you just do mortal wounds when you charge. And then having your attacks go to rend 3 out of 6 is just tasty. So I like them. And that's it. That's it for command abilities and traits. My favorite combinations amongst all of those are definitely Blood of the Berserker plus any of the things from the Runefather list that make them more attacky. I really like D3 command points. I probably wouldn't give an artifact to a Berserker just because they're meant to die. And then the Obsidian Icon. Ignoring spells on a 4-up is just super good. That's just super good. So, with that being said, we're going to move into the other units. I think is we have the units, endless prayers, quote unquote, and then the lodges left, and that's pretty much it for the book. And then we can chat about points. So, let's go over there. Yeah. Okay. There's the heroes, and here we are. So we have only 3 units to work with this entire army. So, Volkite Berserkers are your basic dude. So if you remember, they used to be taken in units of up to 30. I think they're bought in 10s. They can go up to 30. They used to have a save after the save, depending on how many guys were in the unit. So it used to be 1 wound, but if there were 30 guys in the unit, they would have a 4-up save after the save. And so there was a lot of dice rolling and much gnashing of teeth because wounds wouldn't sink through, and they weren't attacky. They were just very sit on an objective and grind you out, and they have changed that dramatically. So things that they changed about the War Scroll, just top level if you haven't heard about it, they went from 1 wound to 2 wounds, and they dropped that ability. What used to be called the Berserk Fury ability used to be that save after a save thing. They got rid of that. Now you have 2 wounds, 5-up save, but remember, we've been keeping account. There's many ways to get modifiers to that. So you can very reasonably be a 3-up save with this unit and 2 wounds. Still makes them super nice. You just have to really tune in. Remember mini lists are going to be important to get the synergies down because things have to go off in a certain order. But yeah, beyond that, everyone has a 5-up throwing axe. And let's see, has any number of models, each armed with a fire steel throwing axes. In addition, it's armed with one of the following weapon options: a fire steel hand axe and a sling shield, a war pick and a bladed sting shield, or a fire steel hand axe. You can take double axes, an axe and a shield, or a pick and a shield. If you go with double axes, you get to reroll hit rolls. Not failed, not of 1, just reroll hit rolls for attacks made with a pair of fire steel hand axes, which is so good. I like that one. The leader of the unit is a Coral. You can add 1 to attacks characteristics of the model's melee weapons. I can't remember. I think they did used to have 2 attacks. Someone can correct me. I don't have my book near me. I think they used to be 2 attacks each before as well, but for the hand axe, it's 3s to hit, 3s to wound. Remember, you can reroll if you go double hand axes. All those fails. Fire steel war pick is 3s to hit, 4s to wound. The trade-off for that 1 to wound is you get rend, which is kind of nice. You have that. Remember that allegiance ability rune where you can increase the rend of everything by 1, so then you have a rend 2 weapon on all of your basic infantry for a turn. Is super good. Horn of Grimnir. 1 in every 5 models can have a Horn of Grimnir. Add 1 to charge rolls for units that include any Horns of Grimnir. So even though 1 in 5 can be armed that way, There's no benefit to taking multiples. But remember, +1 to your charge rolls can be stacked with the command ability from the Rune Father, as well as that artifact that gives +1 to charge roll. Yeah, it just all magnifies. You can be very aggressive with your army here. Berserk Fury, we covered this earlier when we were talking about the battalion that involves these guys, but once per battle at the start of the combat phase, you have to tell your opponent, we're doing the Berserk Fury. During that battle round, anytime a model from this unit is killed, before we remove them, they pile in an attack with all their melee weapons. So that's super cool. And the battalion we talked about, the Kinbad, just lets them do that twice per game. So that's cool. And then their other thing is the Bladed Sling Shield. And so I'm just going to read this because they definitely cleaned it up after a lot of FAQing in the last book. After a unit armed with Bladed Sling Shields, which is their shield, makes a charge move, pick one enemy unit, and roll a dice for each model from the charging unit, meaning these guys, within 8 inches of the enemy unit. For each 6, the unit suffers 1 mortal wound. In addition, add 1 to save rolls for attacks made with melee weapons that target a unit armed with Bladed Sling Shields if the target did not make a charge move that turn. So, that's pretty great. That brings once they're stuck in combat, their save goes to a 4-up. And I like that. Let's see. Oh, Spotted, thank you so much for subscribing. Super duper appreciate it. That's so kind of you. And so what this does is it favors your aggression. Personally, and this is not based on any tournament winning advice, I like the simplicity of the double hand axes. They're an aggressive unit. They're your basic battle line. Get them in there and just start chopping stuff up. There's quite a few ways to buff wounding in this army. So you can reroll your failed hit rolls to get bonuses from the Rune Sun, gives you +1 to wound. And you can do some really nasty stuff because that would be a 3-up rerollable and then a 2-up to wound if you took double hand axes. You're going to grind people out of existence. So yeah, the Bladed Sling Shields, if you have them already, they do functionally very similar things. But I tend to go with the double hand axes because I'm Doug. So over here, we have the elites. And then with the elites, there's an elite melee and an elite shooting. These are bottom boxes of 5. I believe their units can go up to 30. I'm on Burgundy. Let's see. Where are they at? Our Hearth Guard, yeah, 30. And Berserk is 30. Yeah, they can all go up to 30. What's cool is the minimum size is 5. So you can actually start pretty small and then go out from there. So that's kind of cool. We'll start with the melee just to kind of compare the two melee units. Hi, Spotted. And unit of Hearth Guard Berserkers. Yeah, and they get one of 2 weapon options. They get the Broadaxe. And they have very similar profiles. They're both 2-inch range weapons. They can reach over the guy in front of them, which is super important. 2 attacks each. I think they used to be 1 for the poleaxe. 3's to hit, 3's to wound. The differences are that the Broadaxe has a rend of 1 and 2 damage. And the poleaxe has no rend and 1 damage. So why would you ever take the poleaxe? We'll get into that. The poleaxe is interesting because if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a flame strike poleaxe is 6, that attack inflicts 2 mortal wounds on the target in addition to any other normal damage. Yeah, no, I dig that. So the ones that I built and painted, and actually Jack from Rerolling Ones has, and you'll very likely see them in the future on a battle report, has all the poleaxes, and so 2 mortal wounds theoretically on top of their 3-up profile. Even though it has no rend, it'll still get through there, you know. I don't know. I think it's awesome. So let's see. I mean, model wise, I like the axes more. The big Broadaxe, it looks cooler, and also the chain to the poleaxe tail is super fiddly. It's very annoying, but as far as effectiveness, I bet heavy to win heavy, and the hit roll of a 6 doing mortal wounds is awesome. Duty unto death is their other special ability, and they retained their save after the save, which makes them an elite unit. That disparity of survivalness makes them awesome. So if you know what it is, roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to this unit. On a 6-up, it ignores it. However, you can add 2 to that roll if there are any Fyreslayer heroes within, not wholly within, just within 10 inches of this unit. So if you have a hero in a book full of tons of heroes, there are almost 3 times as many heroes as there are actual units in this game. On a 4-up, they are ignoring wounds and mortal wounds that get past their armor save in a faction that has a lot of ways to buff your armor save. So they are the tough as nails unit that they always meant to be. They're supposed to be the most elite of elite, and I think they feel that way now. Whereas these guys are very aggressive and choppy in a different way. I think the rerolls is just awesome. The Hearth Guard Berserkers feel like that elite unit now, and I like it. Then we go on to the Hearth Guard, which is the shooting variant of them. These two come from the same kit, if you didn't know. And for them, they have their main weapon is the ranged weapon, which is called a Magma Pike. 2 attacks, 4 to hit, 3 to wound, -1 rend, and 1 damage. The range 18 is pretty tasty. I found these guys to be pretty effective at, like, if there's just 1 or 2 models from an enemy on an objective, just clearing them out is really helpful. Or softening something up for a charge from another unit. They can shoot the pikes as well as throw their axes. There's nothing that says they can't do both. Let's see. That Magma Pike also works in melee, but it's not great. It's 1 attack, 3 to hit, 3 to win, which is just fine. Let's see. The Carl makes 1 attack with his missile weapon, and then they have 2 special abilities. The first one pertains to the weapon, and that is Molten Rock Bolts. Add 1 to the damage characteristic for attacks made by Magma Pike missile weapons that target monsters. In addition, if any wounds are inflicted on a monster by a Magma Pike missile, roll a dice on a 4-up until the end of that unit's next turn. Have the unit's movement characteristic and subtract 1 from hit rolls made from that unit. So it just cripples monsters. That's all it does. Again, I don't know how many monsters we see. I guess with the advent of Flesh Eater Courts, we see quite a bit. Having their movement -1 hit. And then their second and arguably more important ability is Sworn Protectors. Roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to a friendly Fyreslayer's hero that is not mounted on a Magma Draught. So all your little guys. And is within 3 inches of any friendly units with this ability. So if they're near one of these units. On a 4-up, that wound or mortal wound is negated, and you must choose a friendly unit with this ability that's within 3 inches to suffer 1 mortal wound. So with that, what they're saying is, if you have a hero near a unit of these guys, on a 4-up, the wound can pass from that hero onto them, and they'll like jump in front of the bullet for them. The reason it's worded funny is if you have a hero with 2 units of these guys, it's just being wordy to make sure you can't do any weird shenanigans. You have to assign that wound to one of those units. So that's all. And it's a really cool thing. It makes them a powerful defense for some stuff. So I like it. Keep in mind, if you take the battalion with them, they can choose a unit to get a +1 armor save bonus, and then they can also, again, make it more survivable by taking on some of those wounds that go at it. So if you were to take a super melee choppy hero with all the command traits and artifacts we talked about earlier, you can then throw him headlong into melee, and these guys, you can use them to defend and shrug off wounds from your Grimwrath Berserker who's attacking and piling like a madman. Interesting stuff. Do you see it all the time? Probably not. I think there's better shooting, even if you want to stick with the Dwarden keyword, like Alliance and maybe some KO or Dispossessed. But they're cool. I like the Sworn Protector thing. I like entourages, like for heroes, narratively. And that's it. That's it for the factions units. We went through all the heroes, command abilities, and now the units. So the last 2 things I want to talk about this book are the not endless spells, the lodges, now that we have some context to all this stuff, and just my thoughts on like how they're going to play. And then that's yet to be seen. The book's not even technically released yet. But I have a few thoughts. So, really quickly, I'm just going to give my 2 cents on the spells. We went through these on an other video, but for the sake of simplicity, I'll just do it here. This one is Zargon Flame Spitter. It goes off on a 3, and there's many ways to get that lowered. What's interesting is they don't count as prayer, so bonuses to prayer rolls do not affect their invocations. But we did see there was an artifact for buffing invocations. So you set it up wholly within 6 inches of the priest. At the start of your shooting phase, if there is a friendly Fyreslayer priest within 6 inches of this model, you can pick an enemy unit within 24 inches of this model and roll 12 dice. Add 1 to the roll if there are 10 or more models in that unit. Add 2 if there are 20 or more models. For each 6, that unit suffers a mortal wound. 6 plus I should add. So it's basically an endless spell that is an artillery piece. Like not free because you paid points for it. How much does that one cost? Now that I think about it. Magma Invocation. So this one's 60 points. That's not bad. I mean, it's not bad to just have in your pocket if you have an extra 60 points laying around, because think of it as kind of like a Plague Claw Catapult, which is a gun that just does better against hordes, right? And that's exactly what it is. If you, as a Fyreslayer player, come up against any kind of Skaven army, you need to burn through big units. Having a gun sit there, shoot something in 24 inches, you roll 12 dice. If it's a big unit, it's Skaven like 40, which is not uncommon at all. For each 4-up out of those 12 dice, it does a mortal wound. That's not bad. Let's see. Runic Firewall. Jati92, I saw your question. I'll get to that in just a second. Runic Firewall, which is basically their char-roasted prismatic palisade. Sets up wholly within 18 inches of the Fyreslayer priest. You can't see through it if a line can be drawn from one person to another that crosses that wall. Reroll save rolls of 1 for attacks that target Fyreslayer units wholly within 12 inches of this model. So that's cool. I mean, it just gives you, if you imagine it's kind of like a bar, it'd be a big zone around it that anything in 12 inches gets a reroll save rolls of 1. That's pretty cool. Let's see, and then Impervious to Heat. Magma Draughts can pass across this model in the same manner as a model that can fly. And that's interesting. One of the things I liked about the Skaven Tide thing was that Skaven units can walk across it, and so we can kind of make a bridge. And so with this, if you find yourself with a charge lane, your enemy can go down, you can throw this there, and they can't come that way, but you and your Magma Droth can go over to them. It's like a one-way door all of a sudden. I think that's an interesting concept. I'm not sure how well it actually pans out, but I like the idea of it for sure. Let's see here. And then the last one is the Molten Infernoth. This one goes off on a 3. Like they all do, I think, yeah. You set them up wholly within 12 of the priest. This is the really cool looking, like, Magma Drake looking thing. And he has Burning Tide. When this Magmic Invocation is set up, the player who set up can immediately make a move with it. It can move 2d6 inches. That's interesting. So it's a random movement. After this model has moved, roll 12 dice for each unit that is within 3 inches of it at the end of its move. For each 6, that unit suffers a mortal wound. Fyreslayer is not affected. Add 1 to the bravery characteristic of Fyreslayers wholly within 18. So it's, if you're taking large hordes of guys and Battle Shock's an issue, or you're a concern of yours, it's good for the Battle Shock thing. I'm not the biggest fan of, like, for some reason the roll 12 dice, but it gets modified based on like the number of models in the target unit is good over here. But I'm not a big fan of just the static roll 12 dice, 6s or mortal wounds. I think it could have been more punchy than that. But also there's a 50% chance that these things don't go away at the end of the turn, so we can just keep doing those things. So I think that's pretty cool. How much is he? He can't be that expensive. Infernoth is 50 points. And the wall is 40. So these are all actually pretty cheap. I like that. There's no like 100-point mega thing. My winner is the Flame Spitter, an artillery piece for 60 points that like use it or don't. It'll do some work throughout the game, and you can just keep re-praying it, I guess, casting it. It can't be unbound. It's just a little artillery piece for weeding out hordes. I like it. That one's a cool one. I think the other ones are just much more situational. And so I'm going to go to the lodges. I'm going to pause here and see if there's any questions in the chat. I thought I saw someone ask a question. Okay. Spotted, how's the book looking? Has much changed? A lot has changed. Fundamentally, this faction has changed from being grindy and save after the saves type thing to now being much more choppy. And a lot more synergy heavy than it is just each war scroll being really, really good in a vacuum. So I like it. Let's see. Jot92, what would you specifically, why you don't like the Doomseeker, Doug? Just curious. It just, the problem with the Doomseeker is that it's on the same page as the Grimwrath Berserker, and both of them are attack solos. Like, they're just aggressive heroes that go out and do one thing, and that's kill. The Berserker is so much infinitely better at doing that. The Doomseeker gets better as he gets hurt, but they only have 5 wounds, and he doesn't have a save after the save. He'll likely just die before he gets to feel the real effects of those things. So I don't know. I just don't care for him. I mean, he's not bad. There are worse heroes, but yeah, he's not my favorite. Let's see here. Yes, Jacob, it is. When the stream is finished, it'll be kind of awkward for about an hour, and then YouTube will throw it up there for you to take a look at. So let's see. Marty thinks the wall is the only playable invocation in competitive format. The others are poop. I disagree. I think the shooter is good now that we live in a world where Skaven and Boon Clan Grotz are just board control, lots of bodies. Rolling 12 dice, 4-ups are mortal wounds. Not bad for thinning stuff out. Let's see. But you are correct. The wall is very important. Board control is a must. That's why I do like the Palisade. It is actually one of my favorite endless spells for that exact reason. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the lodges here. And I'm checking out the Bolstarg Lodge first. Okay, and we've got, let's see here. They gave a little bit of lore. I'm going to go into that during my lore week, or lore set of videos. Not going to be a whole week, I don't think. And what do they get? So they get, if you're not familiar with how this works, you can say your army is General Fyreslayers and all the stuff we talked about applies. Or you can say, I'm with this specific, nation, I guess you could say. They're different. They call them lodges. There's Volstar, Greyfeared, Hermdar, and Lofnir. You can say, these are my kinds of people. And what you do is you get a super cool ability. And the tax for that ability is you get locked into a command ability, a command trait, and an artifact of power. So it pre-decides. There's always a cost benefit, and that's what we're going to talk about. So Volstarg Lodge, the ability you gain is add 1 to charge rolls for Volstagg units. In addition, in your movement phase, in the first battle round, you can declare a friendly Volstarg unit will run. Do not make a run roll. Instead, add 6 to the movement characteristic of all models for the unit in that phase. So turn 1. When you say you're going to run, you don't roll a die. It's auto 6. Everything is auto 6 round 1. Since turn 1 is so important for positioning yourself for objective games and more competitive stuff, that is incredibly important in such a slow army. +1 to charge rolls always. So that means your +1 to your charge rolls that you get for your basic Berserker. Now it's a static +2. Not to mention all the things we talked about, the command point stacking, that makes them even more. And the prayers let you run and charge. I don't think you're going to get turn 1 charges, Well, I mean, if you're playing against Daughters of Cain and they go straight up the board as close as they can to you, it's technically possible. But you know what I mean. Like you're not going to initiate and then go 24 inches. But I mean, it's huge, and I like it. So very aggressive with the movement there. Command abilities. Honor our ancestors. You can use this command ability at the start of the combat phase. If you do so, pick a friendly Volstarg hero. Until the end of that phase, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by that hero, and friendly units of Volkite Berserkers and Hearth Guard Berserkers wholly within 12 inches of that hero. You cannot use this command ability more than once per phase. Pick a friendly Volstarg hero, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by the heroes, and so that's huge. I think what were the Volkites hitting on? I think they were hitting on 3s. Oh my gosh. There's like only 6 pages in this whole friggin' book, and I can't find the one I need. Okay, add 1 to hit roll. So yeah, that would mean your heroes and these 2 units would all be hitting on 2s. So that is nice. And of course your Volkites, if you go double axes, you can reroll. However, if you're doing Volstarg and you're already hitting on 2s, the picks might be better, to be honest with you. You can go pick and hand axe, and that would make you as choppy as humanly possible, because that would give you 4 attacks each, dude. Hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s for the axe, wounding on 4s for the pick. I don't know. That'd be pretty great. And then the command trait you're forced into is Fiery Endurance. Friendly Volstarg units wholly within 12 inches of this model at the start of your movement phase can run in that movement phase and charge later in the same turn. Also super good. So you can have your priests and stuff go to one end in prayer and make a unit run and charge, and then your hero can personally take people and go run and charge, and that is pretty nice. What's the artifact? There's like no downsides to this one. Okay, Volstarg, Artifacts of Power, the Volsax. At start of the battle, pick one of the bear's melee weapons, improve the rend characteristic by 1. In addition, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with this weapon is 6, add 1 to the damage characteristic. Not bad. So this is a fantastic one. There's nothing bad about it, I will say. The aggression with extra movement in the first battle round, pluses to charge rolls in a faction where you can get those already. Command ability, giving +1 to hits. You're not always going to want to use your command points on that, because hitting on 3s is already pretty good. It just depends on what's near you. So, I don't know. I've heard many people say this is the best one. We're going to look at the others just because I want to, but that's tough to beat. There's like no cost. I mean, I guess, command traits and stuff like that and artifacts, and depending on how you build your army, you should probably take a battalion, at least get 1 more, but that's super nice. Next one to talk about is the Greyfeared, and their ability is Spoils of Victory. You can choose 2 additional Greyfeared heroes from your army to have artifacts of power. So that's awesome. If you are someone who likes those things, you can have a sum total of 3 without taking any battalions. That's kind of awesome. I like that one. It makes that chart more relevant. There's like so many artifacts, but so few battalions. I think that was kind of necessary. Command ability. You can use this command ability in a combat phase when a friendly Greyfeared hero is picked to fight. Other friendly Greyfeared heroes that are not mounted on Magma Draughts and are within 3 inches of that hero can fight immediately afterwards before your opponent gets the option to pick a unit to fight. Any model that does so cannot fight again in that combat phase unless an ability or spell allows them to fight more than once. So one of the things that Jagged Rolling Ones was talking about is having a bunch of Rune Sons all trying to vie for power. If you were to take a small group of, say, a Rune Father and 2 Rune Sons all on foot, because they have to be, or you can have someone on a Magma Drawth and then 2 heroes on foot nearby. Basically, you're letting all the heroes in a little clump almost fight as a unit. That's kind of a cool idea. When you combine that with the fact that they can all have artifact weapons, and it just says heroes, so that includes the Berserker, who's just going to tear into things like a madman. And then, because he has an ability to pile in and fight later on, Rune Father with his Grand Key Latch Axe, who can use Blood of the Berserker. the Rune Sun, who gets bonuses for having other Rune Suns nearby. You can make a little hero unit, and I like that. That's a cool idea. Let's see. This is probably the best one for Berserkers because it gives you the most opportunity to use that kind of stuff. Use the artifacts for them. They also have a command trait. You have to take Battle Scarred Veteran. Add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the general's melee weapons while there are 5 or more enemy models within 3 inches. So he wants to get into combat. This is my favorite one for if you want to be hero focused and you want that kind of stuff, like the epic, I don't know, your Rune Father going in and just messing some stuff up. Give him +1 attack on that Great Axe. Let him do the Drought that doubles his attack characteristics, and now he has, 8 or something ridiculous. I'm just letting him go nuts. I like that kind of stuff. Helm of Obsidian is the artifact they have to take, and it says add 2 to wounds characteristic of the bear. Very simple and straightforward. I dig it. And next is Hermdar. Let's see. This one is their ability. Hermdar units wholly within enemy territory or wholly within 12 inches of an objective do not take battle shock tests. That can be good. Certainly can be good when it comes to battle shock near an objective. I don't think I've seen a Stormhost equivalent talk about objectives specifically. So that's cool. I'm not super scared of battle shock. What's everyone's bravery? Like your basic unit that's going to run away. Their Volkites are bravery 7, but 2 wounds each. I think I compare them to like my Warriors of Chaos. I don't often lose so many that I'm running away because they're 2 wounds, right? Because it takes so much work to remove 1 or 2. I'm not terribly worried about that one. So that one's, the ability's all right. Command ability, you can use this command ability at the start of the combat phase. Pick 1 friendly Hermdar Volkite Berserkers unit or 1 friendly Hermdar Hearth Guard Berserkers unit, wholly within 12 inches of a hero, Hermdar hero. That unit fights at the start of the combat phase before players pick any unit. So basically, you get to do it right at the start. Doesn't matter if it's a Deepkin turn 3, I get to attack first because this is before anyone else gets to choose. They get to attack. Interesting stuff. This would be a really interesting one with the Lords of the Lodge Battalion, where you can choose that same unit of Hearthguard Berserkers to attack before, annihilate some stuff, and then later on that round, if they're wholly within 12 of a hero, attack again. And that's what that battalion does, lets them attack twice. Okay, so that's cool. That's a cool synergy there, though. And then command trait is Warrior Indominate. Subtract 1 from wound rolls for attacks that target this general and a friendly Hermdar units wholly within 12 inches. It's alright, -1 to wound. Okay. And their artifact of power is the Tyrant Slayer. Pick one of the bear's melee weapons. You can reroll wound rolls for attacks made with that weapon that target an enemy hero. In addition, if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with that weapon targets an enemy hero is 6, the attack suffers more mortal wound. So, it is a reroll wound rolls against enemy heroes. Alright, it's alright. So, I'm kind of lukewarm on that one. I see the Lords of the Lodge Battalion fitting in super, super well. Sorry, I got the hiccups all of a sudden. But, kind of a hard pass on that one. What's their, I'm trying to think what their paint scheme looks like. What's a Hermdar? Oh, yeah. With the yellow beards. It's alright. It's alright. Wolfnir looks awesome. So about those guys. Okay, Wolfnir. Their ability. Venerators of Volcatrix. This is the Magma Drawth focused one. I like it. Each Magma Drawth in a Wolfnir army instead of... It's written a little funny. Each Magma Drawth in a Wolfnir army instead of only one can be given a Magma Drawth trait. We talked about those traits. As far as I know, it's a trait. It's not like a renowned artifact. I don't know if you can double up on them. In addition, if you are fighting a pitched battle, you can include one additional behemoth in your army, as long as every behemoth is a Magma Drawth. So it has to be pure Fyreslayer behemoths, but you can include one more. Okay. That's cool. So you could do a whole bunch of dudes on Magma Draweth. What they're really saying is, we're not selling enough Star Collecting boxes. I'm just kidding. That's 100% a joke. Their command ability you get for them is Torrent of Magma. Actually, I'm kind of curious. I'm going to pause right there. So it says you can include one extra behemoth. How many points are they each? So here's all the Magma Drawths. 280, 260, and 240. I think... I mean, I would be fluffy enough of a dude to only ever include one Runefather, because that's who I am. But they're expensive as all get out. So I don't know how many you would really realistically take, even if you could take an extra behemoth. You can use this command ability in your shooting phase. This is the Torrent of Magma command ability from them. You can use it in shooting phase. If you do so, pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of a friendly Lofnir priest. Until the end of that phase, add 1 to hit and wound rolls for attacks made with magma pikes by friendly units that target that enemy unit. Okay, so you pick a dude, and then till the end of the phase, magma pikes, which is the ranged elite guy's weapon, get +1 to it, +1 to hit and wound, which is pretty great. So there's some cool synergy there. What's interesting, though, is it incentivizes you to take the shooting unit, right? Which is great because it helps you shrug off wounds. But part of the condition for that shrugging off wounds is that they're not on a Magma Drawth, which is what everything else here wants you to take. So that's an interesting, strange... I don't know. Maybe the lore they're trying to dictate, and I'll get into the lore later because I haven't read it yet, is that the Magma Drawths charge in and then they're followed up by shooting, rather than what I'm thinking of in my brain is like the shooting guys defending the heroes on the Magma Drawth. That's kind of a strange interaction. There's not a lot of synergy there, but okay, I'll let it ride. And then command trait, Explosive Charge. Add 1 to charge rolls for friendly Lofnir Magma Drawths within 12 inches of this general, which of course stacks with all the bonuses to charging we've talked about so far. And then, let's see, Igneous Battle Throne. Roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or mortal wound to the bear. On a 6-up, it's negated. So, this is an interesting one. I'd be interested to see how it plays out with a lot of Magma Drawths supported by shooting. I hadn't considered that. I was more thinking Magma Drawths and a bunch of like Berserkers to go sit on objectives while the Magma Drawths do the work. But it's interesting to have the shooting be buffed so heavily with it. So that is it. We have covered every single thing that's not lore in this book. What I'm going to do is, if anyone has any thoughts, questions for me, if you want to see a model, I can pull it up on the GW site. Kind of my overall thoughts when I look at this, while you guys are asking your questions. Actually, if you could, when you type your question out, if you can put question in all caps and then write it out so I can see it a little easier with my screen. Kind of surface level thoughts, like bird's eye view. I think they're still super tough. 2 wounds. I mean, the only thing I have to compare it to would be my Chaos Warriors, who have a 2-up save. Sorry, 2 wounds and a 4-up save. They're hard to dislodge in large groups. In fact, I usually take a unit of 10 because they just don't go away by the end of the battle. I don't know. As far as the terrain piece, I'll just touch on that, Hagbean. I think it's really, really cool. I think it's certainly something where you don't have to take it. It gives you +1 to your prayer rolls, which are important because there's a lot of good prayers in this book. But it's not the same level of importance and dramatic impact as like the Deepkin Boat or something like that. Year of Shorty, you asked if battalions were worth it. Let's take a look at how much they cost. I know some folks joined us a little bit later. That's totally cool. So my favorite was the Warrior Kinbad, which lets Berserkers pile in, and that they have a once per game pile in attack before they die kind of thing, and this lets them do that twice per game, each unit of 3. So there's 3 units that each get to do that twice per game. And that one's 140 points, and the Lords of the Lodge is 140, and the Forge Brethren, which is interesting, it's the one that lets you pick a unit That's within 18 inches of one of the Auric Hearth Guard and get +1 of their save rolls is 160. As far as like my favorite ones, the Warrior Kinbat's my favorite because you're gonna want those battle line troops anyway. It seems like a really good place to start with an army. You know, let's see. Oh, you guys are filling up the chat here. 1 second. So yeah, as far as the battalions, I think the Kinbat is great because it fills your battle line. The Lords of the Lodge is also good if you want to really focus on Hearthguard Berserkers, which are worth focusing on. I think all of the book is magnified by the Volstar Battalion, the Lodge. I mean, I don't think you're going to see many of anything else. Now, Hagbean, so basically the Forge gives your nearby priests, it gives priests within 18 inches +1 to their prayers, as long as there's one within 6. He has to like stoke the fires, and then all the priests nearby get a bonus. And then once per game, you can what's called burn the Forge, where you no longer get those bonuses to prayers, but the entire army everywhere table-wide gets re-rolling save rolls of 1, which I thought was pretty cool. Reegs just joined the chat. How's the Tomb coming? Caught up with the other armies in terms of power. I think they're definitely going to be mid-tier in terms of power. I don't foresee them being a real powerhouse. I think they're going to be aggressive for sure. And if you're not ready for that many wounds to come at you, you are going to be taken by surprise. But still the fact remains that like, they don't have a lot of shooting. They don't have a lot of spell defense. They don't have a few things. So I think they're going to be kind of like, you know how Daughters of Cain are super aggressive, very melee into their blenders, but they don't, like at the top level tournaments, you see like Adepticon, and this is all just based on like stuff that I've seen, the winning records and that kind of stuff. They don't win the highest level of events as a faction all the time. And the reason that is people start to prepare for them. And I think this kind of falls in that same niche. If you build an army that's prepared to deal with Daughters of Cain, you will be able to handle this. There's a few pieces that if you shut down the synergies, you can take care of them. But I do think, however, that they are still going to be a tough nut to crack once you really dive in and get the synergies of all the bonuses to save rolls and the re-rolling save rolls, and then, combine that with the aggressiveness. Because I didn't really terribly cover it, but like each guy having 2 attacks, 3 up, 3 up, I mean, they get very melee aggressive. I think they did a good job of trading the defensive bonuses for a more offensive capability. Multiple ways to get run and charge. Your heroes, I think, are going to play a bigger role in the army just based on the amount of artifacts and the synergies with them and their the Magma Draughts and that kind of stuff. So I think it's definitely going to focus more on heroes now. It's a complete rebalancing. There's almost nothing you can take from the old book, and like this still works. Massive fan of the channel from the UK. Thank you so much. Let's see. Do you think Magma Draughts have had a big enough changes to see the table now? I will be honest with you. Like, yes. I'm going to say yes for a few reasons. One, if you don't remember the old command abilities, they were very clunky and awkward, and they weren't that great, and they weren't that game-changing. Now they've changed it to where each of the Magma Draughts, the Runefather and the Runeson, they're the only 2 that have command abilities. They matter army-wide. You want the Runefather for Ignore Battle Shock and a huge bubble. The Runeson becomes a one-man wrecking crew because he can make himself do D6 mortal wounds on the charge. So aggressive, defensive. They still have a 4-up save. They streamline the rules. Basically, the thing about Magma Draughts is I don't think that they have necessarily changed or gotten significantly way over the top OP better to be in the meta. However, I think the game has evolved to a point where we're seeing more and more horde armies. Some of the most recent armies to come out, Daughters of Cain's generally a horde army. Skaven, Gloomspite Gits, Flesh Eater Courts. If you could take a big mob of, see Gristlegore a whole lot, but you can take a large unit of Crypt Horrors. These things eat hordes for breakfast. like in a huge, unbelievably fun and you'll just never stop smiling kind of way. Between barfing fire and the tail lashing and chomping on people with the claws and jaws and the latchkey grand axe slicing 3 dudes in half with every swing. Like, all this stuff is about hordes. If you use them that way, right, and you don't try plowing one of these things into like Archaon, I think you will get some pretty good results. It just requires you to be very intelligent about where you send them. So I think they definitely got a boost for sure, with the command abilities being boosted, as well as some of the cleaned up attack characteristics and that kind of stuff. So they're more deadly, they're more utility for the army, and they're just really, really good at fighting hordes for sure. Spotted. Missing the units list, but I'm getting the idea of no riderless Magma Drawth. That is true. Yeah, it's one of the things that I saw. People were kind of like assuming that there was going to be a riderless Magma Drawth. However, having built the kit, that seat attachment, and I guess you can't really see it from that picture. Here, let me pull it up. I've got the page right here. Might as well show it. So if you look at the Magma Drawth here, this whole section, like where the seat attaches to the back, there's a massive gaping hole where that seat plugs. And so there was never not going to be a Magma Drawth kit. Anyone who has built the kit realized unless they come out with an expansion kit to like plug the hole or something, there probably wasn't going to be one. So yeah, that's kind of the way it is, which is a bummer because frankly, I kind of would have liked it. I would have liked a menagerie of Magma Drawth going at people. So what we got here? Just out of curiosity, have you tried the new DLC for Total War? Nope, haven't played it yet. Been super busy. So does anyone have any last questions for the Battletome? What I'm going to say is I think it's a great book. I think, as I said at the top of the show, if you play Seraphon, Beastclaw Raiders, Sylvaneth, the big takeaway, grand picture for me is just how far they're willing to go with rewriting the I guess, Wave 1, we'll call them books, where this was a drastic overhaul. Everything changed about them. The entire crux of how they play in terms of being defensive and grindy on objectives to being very offensive and hero-focused instead of hordes and hordes of dudes, all the same dude, right? Sam Pearson, I think, in an interview said he wanted to move away from the old days, which was take 3 units of 30 Volkite Berserkers. So your whole army is the same guy. They wanted to move away from that. And I think in that regard, they are successful. They devalued the Volkite Berserker, but increased the value of the Hearth Guard Berserker, the hero emphasis, but then also gave the heroes a great synergy with like shrugging off wounds and that kind of stuff. So I think overall it's the best possible redesign that gives me a lot of hope for folks in the future. By folks, I mean future Battletomes that are being rewritten. I'm trying to think of anything else. I guess the less enthusiastic parts of me are the battalions. I think they could have done more with them. Even just added just weird combinations of stuff just to have other ways of designing an army. Very excited for Ironjawz given the trend. Absolutely. Ironjawz are going to be a great contender for this. Dog says, can you build a Magma Drawth only army? No, you cannot. All the Magma Drawths are hero characters. You still need battle line. Which, speaking of which, that's actually a good point. Let's see what's battle line. Battle line. So obviously the Volkite Berserkers are always battle line, and that's pretty great. The Hearth Guard are battle line if the general is an Auric Rune Master, which is going to be kind of rare. Those are the shooting guys, and that's the priest that doesn't tunnel up. So that's not going to happen a ton. The Berserkers are battle line if the general is a Rune Father, which is very likely to happen. I mean, a lot of times you're going to have a Rune Father in your army, so why wouldn't they be battle line? So I could definitely see a world in which you had 2 units of Volkite Berserkers, a big unit of Volkite Berserkers, a big unit of Hearth Guard Berserkers, and that would be your battle line. And that would be great. Dan, are 2 units of Fyreslayers and a Sylvaneth Ironbark Battalion worth it? Like 10 Hearth Guard and a Battlesmith. I am not familiar with that battalion, to be perfectly honest with you. But if you're asking if just a few things allied in, Hearth Guard Berserkers, if you were to bring your Battlesmith, they would have their 5-up save, rerolling 1s from the Battlesmith, and then +1 to their save from the Battlesmith. So it'll be 4-up save, and then also have a 4-up super save after that. And I think they're solid. So if you went with Hearthguard Berserkers and a Battlesmith, that'd be super sweet. But again, I'm not familiar with that one, so I can't tell you. Other than that, very enthusiastic. How's the art been in the book? Previews were gorgeous. Art is fantastic. It's the first thing I commented on when I started this video. Oh God, almost 2.5 hours ago. Okay, I can talk for a long time. Thank God I'm a YouTuber. Okay, so yeah, a lot of cool looking art. Some of it's recycled in terms of like they still have the lodge images from other stuff, but they just look beautiful. Yeah, I think the artist did a great job. Let's see. Turrentino. Now that reminds me, where exactly does it say that certain generals can make other types of units battle lines? Yeah, if you look at the points on the back, where it says pitch battle profile, you'll see a section that says battlefield role, and you can look down that, and it basically tells you if it's a leader, whatever. If it says battle line, like Volkite Berserker, it means no matter what in any army you kind of build, they are going to be a battle line or fill that battle line requirement. And if you look where it says notes, it says battle line in a Fyreslayer's army if blank is general or something like that. So it kind of gives you your conditional thing there. So yeah. I had hoped that the KO hero would make the other Balloon Bros battle line. Nope, no dice. A lot of hopes for the KO book. Jate, any favorite art pieces? Actually, I think it was towards the beginning. Yeah, I like this. This is everything that the Fyreslayer is about. Let me tilt it so the light's not killing it. But to me, this is just, when you think about playing a Fyreslayer's army, they're busting out of this hellish looking lodge up here. All the runes are glowing on the dudes. You got a Magma Draweth. There's like a Rune Father, and you can barely see with the light, but his like Grand Axe mid swing, it's the best. Oh, here's the Magmic Invocation in the sky. Those are screamers of Tzeentch blowing up. I just love it. There's nothing that's bad about it. Rogue's 2 Forms, hello from Norway. Hello to you as well. And you say love the Black Talon book. Awesome. I'm about halfway through it. Spotted, gonna have to shoot off early. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your subscription on Twitch. I almost said Spotify. I don't know what I was thinking. But I'm actually gonna hop off here pretty soon too. I just wanted to talk about the book a little bit because GW was kind enough to send me an early copy. Oh, thank you. Got some bits. Send me that early copy, and I don't ever do these. So tell me in the comments below if you like this kind of video, or I just walk through the synergies of stuff. Talk about my thoughts, and I'm very excited to know if people like this, if they like the more crunchy side instead of just the lore only. But yeah, anyway, let me know, and I will talk to you all very, very soon. This is my Wednesday video, and I'll have a review of the Deepkin Star Collecting box going up on Friday. So thank you all so much, and I'll talk to you next time.